"My mother is confused," Derek Jennings said at the will reading. He said it calmly, almost kindly, which made it worse. His hand rested beside a yellow legal pad. He had written several figures on it while the executor spoke, then circled one of them twice. Martha Jennings sat across the table from him in a small office in downtown Salida. Rain pressed against the window. Her wet coat hung behind the door, and one drop kept falling from the sleeve onto the carpet. The executor lowered Raymond's will. Confused about what, Mr. Jennings? The property? The expenses? What she can realistically manage? Derek was 46, old enough to know that his mother understood every word. He also knew she hated public arguments. For years he had depended on that. Martha folded her hands to keep from touching the canvas bag at her feet. The bag contained tax notices, repair receipts, a pair of work gloves, and Raymond's thick operating ledger. Derek continued. She's been spending money on a condemned mill. She's living in a loft that wasn't meant to be a residence. She's making commitments she can't explain. I've explained every one of them, Martha said. You've explained them to yourself. The executor looked at her rather than Derek. Mrs. Jennings, did you bring Raymond's operating ledger? Derek stopped tapping his pen. Martha felt the hard corner of the book through the side of the bag. She had known the question was coming. She hadn't known how much would depend on her answer until that moment. 3 months earlier, nobody had wanted the ledger at all. Raymond Jennings had been buried on a cold morning beneath a sky the color of an old dish towel. The cemetery stood on the edge of Salida, where the wind came down from the mountains without asking permission. Martha kept one hand on her hat and the other around Christina Navarro's arm. Christina was Raymond's daughter from his first marriage. She was 42, with dark hair pinned up carelessly and flour caught in the seam of her black coat. She had opened her bakery before dawn, prepared the morning trays, then left her assistant in charge so she could attend the service. Derek stood on Martha's other side. He looked straight ahead while the minister spoke. His coat was new, and he had forgotten to remove the white thread holding the back vent closed. Martha noticed because Raymond would have noticed. He would have leaned close and whispered, "Don't tell him until after. Let the boy have one dignified hour." Derek wasn't a boy. Martha knew that. Grief simply returned old versions of people without warning. Raymond had died near the end of the previous year, after a brief illness that turned serious faster than anyone expected. He was 72. 1 week he had been at the kitchen table complaining that hospital coffee tasted like boiled cardboard. The next week, Martha was signing forms and deciding which suit should go to the funeral home. After the burial, Derek drove Martha back to the house in Salida. Christina followed in her delivery van because she needed to return to the bakery by afternoon. The house had belonged to Raymond before he married Martha, though they had lived there together for more than 30 years. Martha had painted its bedrooms, replaced the kitchen floor, planted the lilacs, and kept every receipt in labeled envelopes. Derek had already begun speaking about it as if she were visiting. Inside, neighbors had left casseroles on the counter. Somebody had brought 3 kinds of potato salad. Derek removed his coat and opened Raymond's desk before Martha had taken off her shoes. "Not today," Christina said. "I'm looking for the insurance folder. You know where the insurance folder is." Derek pulled open another drawer. Martha placed her hat on the hall table. "It's in the green file box under the printer." He found it exactly where she said. "Thanks, Mom." There was nothing openly wrong with the words. Still, Christina watched him carry the box into the dining room and begin sorting papers beside the funeral flowers. Martha made coffee. That was what she did when people were in her kitchen and didn't know where to put their hands. She filled the old drip machine, counted scoops, and pressed the switch. Raymond's mug was still upside down on the drying mat. She moved it into the cupboard. Christina saw her do it. She didn't say anything. Derek spread documents across the table. "We need to get organized before bills start landing." "They've already started," Martha said. "Then we're behind. Your father hasn't been buried 2 hours. I know what time it is, Christina. So do the rest of us." Martha carried 3 mugs to the table. She gave Derek his coffee black, Christina's with milk, and sat down without pouring one for herself. Derek took out his yellow legal pad. "The house is straightforward. Dad's savings are straightforward. The problem is the mill." Martha looked toward the back window. Beyond the fence, the Arkansas River moved between pale banks of winter grass. Jennings Mill stood several miles away, along County Road 175, farther upstream, where the water narrowed and ran harder. Raymond had bought the old Riverside grist mill in the early 90s. He repaired it for years, then closed it when the machinery became too costly to maintain. Even after that, he drove out regularly with a thermos and a toolbox. He called those trips maintenance. Derek called them wasted Saturdays. What problem? Christina asked. The county estimate puts it near demolition value. There's a leaking roof, delinquent taxes, an unusable turbine, and equipment nobody wants. The stones are still there, Martha said. Derek glanced at her. The stones aren't worth what it costs to move them. He didn't want them moved. Dad wanted a lot of things. Martha heard impatience underneath the sentence. Derek heard practicality. Christina heard both. Derek turned the legal pad toward Martha. At the top, he had written the house. Beneath that were the savings, Raymond's truck, household property, and the mill. Beside the mill, he had written $25,000, then added a question mark. The cleanest arrangement is for you to take the mill, he said. I can handle the house and the accounts. Christina put down her coffee. The cleanest for whom? For everybody. Mom won't have to deal with selling it. You just said she should take it. She takes it through the estate. Then I arrange the sale. Martha studied his list. Her name appeared only once, next to Jennings' mill. Where would I live? She asked. Derek leaned back. We've talked about assisted living. You talked. I listened. It doesn't mean a nursing home. There are nice apartments with meals, housekeeping, transportation. I drive, for now. Martha looked at him. Derek's face changed slightly. He knew he had gone too far, but he didn't take the words back. Christina reached for Martha's hand. Martha moved it gently, not because she rejected Christina, but because she didn't want to be comforted while Derek was measuring her. What happens to the house? Martha asked. We sell it. It's too much upkeep. It has 2 bedrooms, it has stairs, an old furnace, and property taxes. So does half of Salida. Derek rubbed his forehead. He had spent the past week returning calls, speaking to the bank, and answering questions from relatives who offered sympathy but no help. In his own mind, he was carrying the family. He couldn't see that he had begun carrying it away from Martha. Mom, I'm trying to make sure you're safe. Then ask me what safety looks like. All right, what does it look like? She took her time. It looks like nobody deciding where I live while I'm making funeral coffee. Christina looked down, hiding the brief satisfaction in her face. Derek capped his pen. We don't have to settle it today. No, Martha said, we don't. He gathered the papers, but he left the legal pad open. Martha saw another note near the bottom. Mill taxes 18,000, 90 days. She pulled the pad closer. What is this? Derek sighed. The delinquent property taxes. There's a deadline before the county process moves forward. You knew? I found the notices in Dad's desk. And you didn't begin with that? I was getting to it. Martha read the line again. $18,000 was more than she could pay from her checking account. Raymond had handled the larger property expenses. She had handled household bills, groceries, medical statements, and the 1,000 ordinary costs that kept a life from coming apart. Did Raymond know? Christina asked. Of course he knew, Derek said. He wasn't senile. Martha raised her eyes. Derek looked away first. The words settled over the table. It hadn't been aimed at her, not yet, but it showed her where his thinking could go. Christina pushed back her chair. I need to check something in the garage. Derek gave a humorless laugh. What could possibly be in the garage? Raymond's mill tools. Martha remembered then. 2 weeks before he entered the hospital, Raymond had asked her to bring home a wooden tool chest from the mill. The roof had begun leaking above his workbench. He didn't want the tools rusting. There's a black book inside, he had told her. Keep it with the mill things. She had asked whether he meant his ledger. That's the one. What's in it? Work that shouldn't be forgotten. Raymond had been tired that day. Martha hadn't pressed him. She carried the chest into the garage, covered it with an old tablecloth, and went back inside to make soup. Now she led Christina through the kitchen. Derek followed. The garage smelled of cold concrete and motor oil. Raymond's truck sat on one side. The wooden chest rested beneath the window, still covered. Derek pulled off the tablecloth. Most of this can go to auction. No, Martha said. He had already lifted the lid. Inside were wrenches, grease pencils, a voltage tester, folded rags, and several small tins of machine parts. The ledger lay beneath a leather tool roll. Its black cover had softened at the corners from years of handling. Derek opened it and flipped through pages. Dates, meter readings, maintenance notes. Martha held out her hand. He passed it to her. The entries were written in Raymond's square handwriting. Some pages carried little oil marks from his fingers. The most recent lines listed brief test runs, belt checks, standby payments, and numbers Martha didn't understand. "Nothing here changes the taxes," Derek said. "I didn't say it did. It's a maintenance notebook for machinery that doesn't work." "Then why are you in such a hurry to throw it away?" Christina asked. "I'm not. Keep it. Frame it." Martha closed the cover. The tiny act of disrespect helped her more than sympathy would have. It cleared something in her mind. "I'm going to see the mill," she said. Derek stared at her. "When?" "Tomorrow. There's snow on that road. There's snow on every road. The building isn't safe. Then I'll look from outside." Christina leaned against the workbench. "I'll drive you." "No," Martha said. "You have the bakery. I can come after the lunch rush." Martha considered it. "Meet me there at 2. Derek stepped between them and the garage door, not blocking it exactly, but making his body part of the discussion. "What are you expecting to find?" "I don't know. That's my point." "No, your point is that you know what's there without looking." He lowered his voice. "If you take that property, you take the debt and the risk. You understand that, right? I understand the number you wrote down. There may be more. Then I'll find out." Martha carried the ledger into the house. She placed it beside Raymond's green file box and began making her own list. She wrote the county tax office first, then roof, water, electricity, insurance, road access, turbine room, and locks. She found Raymond's old ring of mill keys in the desk drawer. Derek watched from the doorway as she tested each label against the ledger's inside cover. "You don't have to prove anything," he said. Martha slipped the keys into her handbag. "Good. That leaves me time to learn something." The next afternoon, she drove alone along County Road 175 with a suitcase in the trunk, though she hadn't told Derek about the suitcase. The road followed the river past cottonwoods, weathered fences, and open ground patched with snow. Jennings' mill appeared after a bend, its long gray roof dipping in the middle. One gutter hung loose. A broken board covered part of a lower window. The wooden sign above the loading doors had lost all but a few flakes of white paint. Martha parked beside Raymond's old work entrance. The first key didn't turn, the second entered halfway, the third fit, but the door had swollen against the frame. She pushed once with her good shoulder. The door held. Her left shoulder had never fully recovered from an injury several years earlier. Cold made the joint ache, and hard lifting could leave her unable to raise the arm by evening. Derek knew that. He was counting on it more than he admitted. Martha returned to the car and took the small pry bar from the emergency box in the trunk. She worked it carefully between the door and frame, lifted near the lower hinge, then turned the key again. The lock clicked. A strip of darkness opened before her. Cold air carried the smell of grain dust, damp wood, and iron. She stepped inside and found the electrical panel by memory. The main switch did nothing. She expected that. Raymond had shut most service down years ago. The ledger lay in her handbag. The suitcase remained in the trunk. For the moment, both were hers to place. Martha opened the loading door from inside just as Christina's bakery van came around the bend. Christina climbed out carrying a thermos and 2 wrapped sandwiches. She looked at the open door, then at the pry bar in Martha's hand. "You waited for me, I see. I waited before doing anything foolish. Was that before or after breaking in?" "It isn't breaking in when the key works." Christina smiled for the first time since the funeral. Together they stood at the threshold, looking into the neglected mill. Martha reached along the wall, found Raymond's old hook, and hung the ring of keys where it had always belonged. The hook held. That was more than Martha could say for the floor beneath it. A board shifted under Christina's boot with a soft, rotten sound. She stepped back and tested the next one before putting down her weight. "Raymond kept telling me this section was solid. He said it was solid enough. That isn't the same thing. It was to him." They left the loading area and entered the gristmill floor. 2 round millstones sat inside wooden housings near the center. Belts ran overhead through a maze of shafts and pulleys. A long work table stood by the river wall, covered with tools, grain sieves, and the remains of a mouse nest. Christina ran one finger across a wooden flower chute. How long since this turned, properly? More than 10 years. Dad said he ran it sometimes. He ran parts of it. I don't know which parts. You never came with him? Not after my shoulder. Martha said it quickly, as if that answered everything. It answered enough for Christina to let the subject go. They moved through the mill in stages. Christina walked ahead, where the floor looked uncertain. Martha carried the flashlight and remembered which doors led where. The turbine room was below the main floor, reached by a narrow set of concrete steps. Its door was locked. Martha tried each key on the ring. The fourth one turned. The door opened 2 inches and stopped against something heavy. Cold air came through the gap, smelling of river water and old grease. Christina leaned against it. "Don't," Martha said. "We don't know what's behind there. I was only looking. You were pushing. I can do both." Martha shone the flashlight through the opening. A metal bucket had fallen from a shelf and wedged beneath the door. She found a length of wood beside the steps, slid it through the gap, and moved the bucket enough to open the door. The turbine room was lower than Christina expected. Stone walls pressed close around an iron assembly the size of a small car. Pipes, valves, and belt housings filled most of the space. Rust marked the floor beneath the shaft. One wall carried an electrical panel and a glass-fronted meter with a row of black numbers. Christina stepped toward it. "Is that still connected? I don't know. It looks old enough to have voted for Eisenhower. It probably did." Martha checked the ledger. The first pages held diagrams of the mill, drawn by Raymond with notes in the margins. Some were faded. Others had been added in blue ink years later. She found the turbine room page and compared it with the machinery. He marked the intake valve. "Can we open it?" "No." "You didn't even look." "I looked at the rust on the shaft. If water hits something seized, we may break what's still whole." Christina turned toward her. "You know more about this than you said." I listened when Raymond complained. That must have been an education. It was a complete course. They climbed back to the main floor. Martha locked the turbine room and returned the keyring to the wall. The loft occupied the upper part of the mill, above what had once been an office and grain store. The stairs were steep, but the handrail held. Christina went first and opened the door at the top. The room had 2 windows, a small sink, a narrow bed, a table, and a cast-iron stove. It was rough, but not abandoned. Raymond had left a stack of folded blankets inside a cedar chest. A kettle sat upside down on the stove. 4 clean mugs hung from hooks. A dark water stain spread across one corner of the ceiling. Christina pressed the wall beneath it. The plaster gave slightly. "You can't stay under this roof. I wasn't planning to sleep in that corner. You know what I mean?" Martha crossed to the sink and turned the tap. Nothing happened. "There's no water," Christina said. "I noticed. And no electricity." "I noticed that too." Christina looked through the window toward Martha's car. The suitcase could be seen through the rear glass. "You plan to stay. I plan to have the choice. You have a house. For the moment, Derek can't throw you out." Martha removed her gloves 1 finger at a time. "He hasn't tried." "Then why are you here with clothes?" "Because every time he walks into that house, he starts a new pile. Things to sell, things to store. Things I won't need wherever he thinks I'm going. Tell him to stop. I have. Tell him to leave." Martha gave her a tired look. "He's handling the estate. He can handle it from somewhere else. That isn't how Derek works." "No, it's how you let Derek work." The words came out harder than Christina intended. She reached for the thermos, then set it down again. "I'm sorry." Martha sat at the table. Dust had settled around a clean circle where Raymond once kept something. Probably the thermos he carried on Saturdays. "You're not wrong." Christina unwrapped the sandwiches. One held roast beef and horseradish. The other held egg salad because Martha had eaten it every Friday at the bakery for years. They shared the egg salad and left the roast beef wrapped for later. When Martha and Raymond married, Derek had been a grown man in the making, full of loud opinions and empty drawers. Martha had found his missing forms, reminded him about appointments, and loaned him money he forgot to repay. She had done those things because she was his mother. Later, when he learned to speak to banks and contractors without hesitation, she let him take over any conversation that involved figures. It had seemed efficient. Raymond made the large decisions. Derek explained them afterward. Martha knew where everything was and made sure everyone arrived fed and on time. She had called that being needed. Sitting in the loft, she could finally see the difference between being needed and being consulted. Her phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. Christina waited. Martha answered. "Where are you?" "At the mill." "You drove out there?" "How else would I get here?" "I went by the house." "Your car was gone." "Yes. I need the authorization from Dad's bank. It's in the green file box." I looked. Did you look behind the medical folder? A pause followed. She heard papers moving. I found it. Good. Are you coming back soon? Martha looked at the bed, the leaking ceiling, and the dry sink. Why? What do you mean, why? Do you need something else? No. I'm asking when you'll be home. The word caught her. For one hopeful second, she imagined him standing in the kitchen, ashamed of the way he had treated her after the funeral. She imagined him closing Raymond's desk, ordering dinner, and waiting because he didn't want her alone. Then Derek said, "The estate appraiser is coming tomorrow morning. I need you there to identify your personal items." Christina watched Martha's face change. What time? Martha asked. 9. I'll be there. Good. Don't move anything at the mill. It isn't distributed yet, and repairs could complicate the valuation. I opened a door. Mom, I'm allowed to open a door. I don't want to argue. Just don't sign anything or hire anyone. Martha looked toward the black ledger on the table. Did Raymond ever tell you why he kept records of the mill? He kept records of everything, not like these. What's in them? You had the book in your hands yesterday. I saw maintenance notes. That's what I saw too. Then, what are you asking? She had hoped he knew something. His impatience sounded genuine. Nothing, she said. I'll see you at 9. After the call, Christina poured coffee into one of Raymond's mugs. He calls when he needs you to find paper. He asked when I'd be home. He needed you there for the appraiser. I know. Martha took the mug, but didn't drink. Christina sat across from her. You keep waiting for him to say, this is still your house. He shouldn't have to. No, he shouldn't. That was the painful part. Martha didn't want to demand a place at the table. She wanted Derek to pull out the chair without being told. She had spent years making belonging look effortless for everyone else. Raymond's shirts appeared clean. Derek's birthdays were remembered. Christina's bakery opening had flowers on the counter before sunrise. Holiday dinners happened because Martha began planning them, while other people were still discussing dates. Now she wanted somebody to notice she had nowhere settled to put her nightgown. Christina stood and examined the sink pipes. A copper line disappeared through the floor. There must be a shutoff downstairs. Raymond drained the pipes every winter, so the water might work. It might leak into the mill. That too. They followed the pipe down through the old office. A wooden cabinet stood against the back wall, its doors painted gray. Inside were cleaning supplies, empty oil cans, and a row of labeled valves. Martha checked the ledger again. Loft water, south wall, she read. The valve handle resisted. She wrapped it with a rag, braced her feet, and pulled with her right hand. It moved a quarter turn. Somewhere above them, a pipe knocked. Christina ran upstairs. A moment later, she called down. Nothing yet. Martha opened the valve another turn. Water rushed inside the pipe, followed by a sharp hiss. "Turn it off!" Christina shouted. Martha closed it at once. She climbed the stairs and found water spraying from a split fitting beneath the sink. Christina had caught most of it in the kettle. "That answers one question," Christina said. "The supply works. The pipe doesn't. The fitting doesn't. The pipe may be fine." Martha knelt and examined the break. It was a short exposed section with a threaded connection, simple enough to replace. Christina held the flashlight. "You still have your shoulder brace?" "In the car." "That wasn't my question." "Yes." "Do you wear it?" "When I need it." "You needed it opening that valve." Martha wiped the fitting dry. "I used my right arm." "And twisted your left side against the cabinet. You sound like Derek." "No, I sound like someone who wants you to be able to lift a coffee cup tomorrow." Martha sat back on her heels. Her shoulder had begun to throb. She disliked Christina being right because Christina used the truth differently from Derek. Derek turned weakness into authority. Christina turned it into a problem to solve. "Bring me the brace," Martha said. Christina's expression softened, but she had the sense not to make much of the victory. She returned with the brace and the roast beef sandwich. Martha put on one and ate half of the other. They found a replacement fitting in a drawer beneath the workbench. Raymond had labeled the drawer plumbing, though it also contained washers, twine, 2 spark plugs, and a package of peppermint candies hardened into one solid piece. Martha shut the water valve, removed the split fitting, and cleaned the threads. Christina held the pipe steady. The new fitting went on without trouble. When they opened the valve again, the pipes knocked, coughed, and then delivered a thin stream of brown water into the loft sink. They let it run. The water cleared slowly, first yellow, then cloudy, then cold and clean enough to see the bottom of the white enamel basin. Christina washed out the kettle. "One working thing," she said. "One partly working thing. I own a bakery. Partly working is our usual condition." They filled the kettle and carried it downstairs without lighting the stove. The chimney needed checking before they used a fire. Before leaving, Martha measured the damaged roof corner and wrote the figures on the next blank page of a small notebook from her handbag. She listed the pipe fitting, a plumber's tape roll, a roof tarp, batteries, drinking water, and a carbon monoxide detector. Christina read over her shoulder. "You're making a repair list. I'm making a safety list. Does Derek know there's a difference? He'll learn." Martha locked the turbine room, the office, and the loading door. Then she took the keys from the wall. At the car, Christina waited for her to open the trunk. Martha lifted the suitcase out. "You're still not sleeping here tonight," Christina said. "No." "Good. I'm taking this to your apartment." Christina lived above the bakery in 2 rooms that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and yeast. She had offered the spare sofa after the funeral. Martha had refused because leaving the Salida house had felt too much like surrender. Now staying there felt like waiting for permission. "Only until the stove and roof are safe," Martha said. "You can have the sofa as long as you need. I'll pay toward groceries. You'll eat whatever the bakery fails to sell. That isn't an agreement. It is in my apartment." Martha placed the suitcase in Christina's van. It was one small piece of control, not much more than choosing where her clothes would be that night. Before they drove away, she looked back at the mill. The open loft curtains moved behind the glass. Water now stood inside the pipes. Her name wasn't settled on any estate paper yet, and the tax clock had already begun. Still, when Derek called again, Martha let the phone ring while she wrote down the name of a roof supplier. It stopped after the 4th ring. A moment later, a message appeared. "Please call me. We need to discuss the appraiser." Martha read it, put the phone face down, and followed Christina's van back to town. The apartment above the bakery had a narrow outside stairway. Christina carried the suitcase because Martha's shoulder was stiff. Martha carried the ledger and the kettle. Inside, a folding screen divided the sofa from the kitchen table. Christina found clean sheets in a cabinet and gave Martha a towel that had Navarro's Bakery embroidered across one end. "It was a promotional idea," Christina said. "People don't want bakery towels. They might if you took your name off. That was my conclusion, too." Martha placed the ledger on a shelf beside 3 cookbooks. She hung 2 dresses in the small hall closet and put her nightgown in the top drawer of a plastic storage unit. It wasn't home. It was somewhere she had been invited. At 9 the next morning, Martha returned to the house. Derek's car stood in the driveway. A gray sedan with a magnetic sign reading High Country Property Services was parked behind it. The appraiser was a thin man named Dennis Corbin. He carried a tablet and wore paper covers over his shoes. His function was to list the house, furnishings, truck, and mill for the estate inventory. He greeted Martha politely, then looked toward Derek each time he asked a question. "Kitchen remodel was when?" he asked. Martha answered. 2008, Derek said. "Around then." "Roof?" 2016, Martha said. Derek said, "That sounds right." "Furnace?" 2012. The blower motor was replaced 7 years later. Mr. Corbin entered each answer. Derek stood beside him, holding Raymond's green file box as if it were a badge. In the bedroom, small yellow stickers had appeared on the dresser, the cedar chest, and Raymond's watch box. Martha touched one. "What are these?" "Inventory markers," Derek said. "Who put them here?" "I did." The sticker on the cedar chest read, "Estate." Martha peeled it off. "That belonged to my mother? I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Mr. Corbin looked toward the doorway. "I can come back if this isn't a good time." "It's fine," Derek said. "No," Martha said. "It isn't fine, but you can finish." She opened the cedar chest and removed a folded note from beneath the lid. Her mother's handwriting identified it as a wedding gift to Martha. She handed the note to Mr. Corbin. "This is mine." He photographed it and changed the item on his tablet from estate property to surviving spouse's personal property. Derek's jaw tightened. He believed the distinction was unnecessary because he didn't intend to take the chest. Martha understood that. What he didn't understand was that intention wasn't ownership. They moved through the rest of the house. Martha identified her mother's dishes, her sewing machine, the bedroom lamp Christina had given her, and the framed photograph from her wedding to Raymond. Each time, Derek waited while Mr. Corbin changed a line on the tablet. By the time they reached the dining room, the yellow stickers looked less certain. Mr. Corbin opened the mill file. I used the county estimate and the exterior photos you sent, he told Derek. If the structure requires demolition, the land value could be offset by removal costs. Which is why we've used $25,000, Derek said. Martha looked at the photographs. They showed the sagging roof, broken lower window, leaning gutter, and brush around the back wall. None showed the gristmill floor, the stones, the turbine room, or the loft. You didn't go inside? She asked. Mr. Corbin shook his head. I understood access wasn't safe. Who told you that? Derek closed the file. I told him the floor has rot. One board near the loading door has rot. There could be more. There could. He still hasn't seen it. Mr. Corbin cleared his throat. A full inspection would require someone familiar with the equipment. I'm not a mill specialist. Did you value the machinery? Martha asked. Only as part of the structure. Did you value the water equipment? No. The electric meter? No. Derek held up one hand. This is an estate inventory, not an engineering study. Then it shouldn't be used to decide the mill is worthless. Nobody said worthless. You wrote $25,000 with a question mark. That was before the estimate, and after, $25,000 without one. Mr. Corbin began putting papers into his case. If the family obtains a mechanical assessment, I can revise the description. I can't promise it changes the value. Martha nodded. That's fair. Derek waited until the front door closed. You made that harder than it needed to be. He valued rooms he entered. He isn't qualified to value a turbine. Then why are you using his number for the whole property? Because we need a number. You need a low number to make it easier for you to receive the mill without creating an imbalance. Martha stood beside the dining table where Raymond had opened his mail every afternoon. What imbalance? If you take a more valuable asset, it affects distribution. You don't believe it's valuable. I believe it's a liability. Then let it be my liability. Derek rubbed both hands over his face. Mom, you are making this personal. It is my home, my husband, and the place he asked me to protect. Which part isn't personal? The estate has rules. So does ownership. You don't own the mill yet. Neither do you. Silence followed. Derek picked up the green file box. I have someone willing to buy it as it stands. Martha felt the conversation shift. Who? A contractor from Buena Vista. He buys distressed properties. For how much? $28,000. Has he been inside? No. Then how did he find out it was available? I asked around. Before the funeral? Derek didn't answer quickly enough. Martha looked at the legal pad on the table. She understood why the mill had appeared beside her name before she had asked what remained in the estate. Derek had already been arranging its exit. He could close quickly, Derek said. The taxes get paid, costs are covered, and you walk away without risk. With what? Whatever remains after expenses. Maybe $8,000 or $9,000. That's better than owing 18. And the house and savings? We review those under the will. You've already decided how you want them reviewed. That isn't true. It was written on your pad. Derek set down the file box with more force than necessary. I am trying to stop a bad property from consuming money that could support you. Then give me the buyer's written offer. It's informal. Ask him to write it. What difference does that make if you're refusing? I want to see what he thinks he's buying. He thinks he's buying land with an obsolete building. Then he won't mind putting that on paper. Derek studied her. He had expected grief to make her passive. Instead, it had made her exact. I'll ask, he said. Thank you. He left with the green file box. Martha remained in the dining room long enough to remove the last yellow sticker from her mother's cedar chest. Then she packed the ownership note, her personal papers, and a small framed photograph of Raymond into a grocery bag. She didn't take anything that wasn't clearly hers. At the bakery, Christina was pulling rye loaves from the oven. Martha waited until the trays were on the cooling rack before telling her about the appraisal and the buyer. $28,000 for a place he hasn't entered? Christina asked. That bothered me too. What does he know? Maybe nothing. Derek may simply want it gone. Christina set down the oven mitts. Dad didn't. No? Then find someone who knows the machinery. Martha opened the ledger on the stainless steel work table. Most names appeared only as initials. R.O. showed up beside repairs stretching across many years. On the inside of the back cover, Raymond had written a telephone number beside the words shaft alignment. Martha called. A man answered after 6 rings. "This is Ronald? Ronald Owens?" "Yes." "This is Martha Jennings." His voice changed. "Martha. I heard about Raymond. I'm sorry, thank you. I meant to come to the service. My hip was acting up, and I don't drive well on ice. You don't have to explain. I should have called. You can call now by answering a question." There was a small sound that might have been a laugh. "What question? Did you work on the mill turbine? Since before Raymond bought the place. Derek says it's unusable. Derek wouldn't know a wicket gate from a garden gate." Christina turned away, smiling. Martha kept her voice steady. "Can you inspect it?" "When?" "Today, if possible." Ronald hesitated. "I can look. Looking and repairing are different promises. I'm only asking for the first one. Meet me there in an hour." Ronald arrived in a faded blue pickup with a metal cane behind the seat. At 74, he moved slowly until he reached machinery. Then his hands seemed to remember a quicker man. Martha introduced him to Christina. He recognized her immediately. "Last time I saw you, you were carrying pastry boxes into Raymond's truck. I still carry pastry boxes." "Good. Some work survives progress." He entered the mill without commenting on the roof. At the weak floorboard, he stopped and marked it with orange chalk from his pocket. "First thing you fix," he said. He checked the stones, lifted belt covers, and examined bearings with a flashlight. He didn't touch the turbine until Martha unlocked the lower room. There, Ronald stood before the iron assembly and removed his cap. "Well," he said quietly. He kept after it. "You can tell?" Martha asked. "Fresh grease isn't fresh anymore, but it isn't ancient. Packing was replaced. These bolts were worked in the last few years. Could it run? Not today." Derek's word, unusable, pressed against Martha's hope. Ronald crouched near the main shaft and tried to move it with a long-handled wrench. It held. "Seized?" Christina asked. "Maybe. Could be the bearing. Could be debris at the intake putting pressure where it shouldn't. Could be both." He inspected the old electric meter, then followed a cable to the generator housing. "Raymond, ever tell you why he kept this connected?" "No." Ronald looked surprised. "He made test runs." "What kind of tests?" "Short ones, enough to turn the equipment and record output." Martha opened the ledger. "These numbers?" Ronald adjusted his glasses and read several lines. "Yes, that's the meter. That's output." "Output of what?" "Electricity." Christina looked from Ronald to the generator. "The mill generated power?" "It did when the turbine ran." "Did Raymond sell it?" Ronald's answer took longer. "Years ago, certainly. After the mill stopped grinding, I don't know what arrangement he kept. He paid attention to that meter, though. He was particular about recording the numbers." Martha pointed to repeated entries marked standby. "What are these payments?" "You'd have to ask the cooperative." "Which cooperative?" "The Regional Electric Cooperative. Their name changed after a merger. Raymond kept the old account number somewhere." Ronald turned several pages, then stopped. "Here, meter number." Martha read the digits. They matched the small metal plate beneath the meter glass. It was the first clear inconsistency she could prove. Raymond hadn't neglected the mill and wandered out for sentimental visits. He had maintained a generator, run tests, recorded output, and made payments connected to equipment Derek had never bothered to inspect. Martha closed the ledger. What would it take to find out whether the turbine can turn? Ronald looked toward the river wall. "We start outside. Clean the intake screen, drain the lower housing, then we see whether the shaft moves without water pressure. How long? If nothing breaks, 2 or 3 days. And if something breaks?" "We learn why Raymond kept so many spare parts," Christina asked. "What do you charge?" Ronald named an amount modest enough to make Martha suspicious. "That includes your time?" she asked. "It includes inspection. If it becomes a repair, we talk again." "I'll pay you." "From what account?" Christina asked. "My own?" "You need that money. I also need an answer." Ronald put on his cap. "Then our first problem is the intake. River carried branches down last spring. I saw the pile from the road. They walked behind the mill. The ground dropped sharply toward the water channel. Brush covered the old access path, and ice clung to the stones near the bank. The intake screen was barely visible beneath a packed wall of branches, silt, wire, and dead grass. Ronald pointed with his cane. "That has to come out by hand. We can't put machinery on this slope until the ground dries." Martha looked at the blocked channel, then at her shoulder brace. Her deliberate action had found the man who could read Raymond's work. It had also turned a few lines in a ledger into several days of cold labor beside moving water. Ronald checked his watch. "I'll bring hooks and safety rope tomorrow," Christina said. "I'll close the bakery after lunch." Martha took the roof supplier's card from her pocket and turned it over. On the back, she wrote intake, rope, gloves, and Ronald. Then she added cooperative beneath them. The next morning, she called the cooperative before leaving the bakery. A receptionist found no active service under Raymond's name at the mill address. She offered to transfer Martha to new accounts. "I'm not asking for new service," Martha said. "I'm asking about an old meter." "Do you have the meter number?" Martha read it from the ledger. The receptionist typed for several seconds. "That number isn't in the current billing system. Does that mean it was removed?" "It means I can't see it here." "Who can? Operations might have archived equipment records. I can send a request. How long does that take?" "Usually 5 business days." Martha gave her name, telephone number, and the County Road 175 address. The receptionist promised someone would call. It wasn't an answer, but it was the first time Martha had asked an office to deal directly with her, instead of waiting for Raymond or Derek. At the mill, Ronald had already laid out 2 ropes, 3 long hooks, and a pair of rubber waders beside the intake path. Martha looked at the slope. "You're not going in the water. Neither are you." "Then why the waders?" "For Christina." Christina arrived after lunch and objected for nearly 10 minutes. Ronald listened without changing his expression. "You're younger," he said. "That isn't a plan. You have better balance. That's almost a plan." They tied the first rope around a cottonwood above the path. The second went around Christina's waist. She pulled on the waders and worked from the edge while Ronald directed the hook. Martha stayed higher on the bank, sorting branches and wire as Christina dragged them up. Her shoulder brace showed beneath her coat. She used her right hand and stopped whenever pain crossed from her shoulder into her neck. The intake screen had collected half the river's trash. They removed sticks, a bent fence post, a length of irrigation hose, 2 plastic feed sacks, and a rusted metal chair without a seat. "Somebody had a poor picnic," Christina said. Ronald examined the chair. "Could be useful. You're Raymond's friend, all right." By late afternoon, water had begun moving through the outer bars. It carried small leaves into the dark channel beneath the mill. Ronald raised one hand. "That's enough for today." "We can finish this section," Martha said. "No, it's still light. And that screen has pressure behind it. If the lower pile shifts, water comes through harder. We stop while everybody still has dry socks." Christina climbed the path. Her face was red from the cold, and mud covered both knees. Martha untied the safety rope. "You all right? I'll answer after coffee." They heated water on a small electric burner plugged into Christina's van. The burner took so long that Ronald threatened to drink the water cold. While they waited, Martha showed him the roof stain in the loft. He pressed a screwdriver into the damaged plaster and found solid wood beyond the soft edge. "Leak is farther upslope," he said. "Water travels before it drops. The supplier has a tarp large enough. Who's putting it on?" "I haven't decided." "That means you plan to." "It's a low roof. It's a wet, low roof with rotten shingles." Martha folded her arms. Ronald pointed at the shoulder brace. Raymond would have argued too. It didn't make him right. He gave her the name of a roofer who did emergency covering. The roofer came that evening, tied off from the ridge, and secured the tarp before dark. He charged more than Martha wanted to pay, and less than a hospital would have. The loft stayed dry through the night's rain. That practical win made the suitcase at Christina's apartment feel temporary in a different way. Martha could picture the loft with a proper ceiling, curtains, and her own dishes in the cabinet. She caught herself deciding where the cedar chest might fit. The following day they returned to the intake. The loosened debris came away in heavy mats. Christina worked the hook. Ronald used a rake from the bank. Martha cut wire and roots from the pieces they pulled clear. Near noon, the lower blockage shifted. Water struck the screen with a deep thump. Christina lost her footing and dropped to one knee. The safety rope tightened. Ronald grabbed the line with both hands. Martha braced it around the cottonwood and leaned back until Christina regained the path. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Christina looked at Ronald. "Better balance?" "Compared with me." Martha's hands shook as she untied the rope. She hid it by coiling the line. "We're finished for today." Ronald nodded. This time, he didn't have to be the one who stopped her. Inside the turbine room, water had begun seeping through the old gate seals. Ronald drained the lower housing into a floor channel and removed a cover from the main bearing. The grease had thickened into something like candle wax. "This is why it won't turn," he said. "You said there could be pressure from the intake," Martha replied. "There was. Now we know there's also this." He showed her a dark ring inside the housing. "Is it ruined?" "Not from what I can see." "Can you free it?" "We can clean it." Free is a promise the metal decides to keep. For 2 days, they worked on the shaft. Ronald removed the old grease and flushed the bearing. Martha cleaned tools, copied part numbers from the ledger, and laid out Raymond's spare seals in order. Christina came after the bakery closed and helped turn the long bar attached to the shaft. At first, nothing moved. On the second evening, Ronald marked the shaft with white chalk. The three of them pulled on the bar again. The chalk line shifted the width of a fingernail. Christina released the bar. "Did that move?" Ronald put his glasses closer. It did. Martha touched the chalk mark. It was no longer aligned with the mark on the housing. They tried again. The shaft moved another fraction, then stopped. It wasn't enough to run anything, but the word seized no longer meant permanently. Ronald covered the bearing for the night. "No water through the turbine until we can turn this by hand." "How much by hand?" Martha asked. "A full rotation without a hard spot. And then we inspect the generator and belts. And then—" Ronald looked at her. "Then we ask the machinery instead of me." The next morning, Derek's written offer arrived by email. The buyer proposed $28,000 for the mill property in its current condition. He wanted a quick closing, no equipment warranty, and permission to remove anything considered unsafe. Martha read it twice at the bakery counter. Christina looked over her shoulder. "He doesn't mention demolition." "No." "He doesn't say what he plans to do with the water channel either." "No." "Are you going to answer?" Martha printed the offer and wrote "declined" across the first page. She signed beneath it, scanned it through the bakery printer, and emailed it to Derek. His call came before the page had finished sliding into the output tray. "You can't decline an estate offer by yourself. I declined it for me. You don't control the property, neither do you. We have a legitimate buyer. We have a buyer who won't say what he values. He values speed. So do burglars." "Mom, stop. I didn't authorize the offer, and I won't support the sale. You're spending money on a property you may not receive. I'm spending my money to find out what Raymond protected. Based on a notebook? Based on work I can see." Derek was silent for a moment. "What work?" Martha looked through the bakery window toward the river. The turbine shaft moved. He gave a short breath. "It moved how much?" "Enough to prove it isn't scrap." "You can move rusted machinery and still have rusted machinery." "That's true. Then what exactly have you proved? That the estimate is incomplete." Derek's voice flattened. "You need to stop treating every expense like an investigation. The taxes don't pause because you're curious. I spoke to the county this morning." That wasn't true yet, and Martha disliked the sentence as soon as she said it. Derek noticed the hesitation. "What did they tell you?" "I'm waiting for a return call." "So you haven't spoken to them?" "I called them." "That's not the same thing." "No, it isn't." Martha wouldn't let herself improve the lie. Derek continued more softly. "Please come home. We can sit down and go through the numbers. Send me copies first." "Copies of what?" "The bank balances, estate bills, tax notices, and anything you've given the appraiser. I've shown you the list." "You showed me your pad." "Mom." "Copies, Derek. What are you going to do with them?" "Read them." The question hurt more than his refusal. He had become so used to information moving through him that her request seemed suspicious. "I'll ask the executor what can be released," he said. "Ask him to send it directly to me. You're making this adversarial. I'm asking for mail." He ended the call without agreeing. The county returned Martha's call that afternoon. The balance was $18,000, including penalties. The employee confirmed the deadline 90 days from the latest notice. After that, the county could begin the next collection step. It wouldn't take the mill overnight, but delay would become more expensive. Martha wrote the exact date in the front of her notebook. She now had less time than the repairs wanted and more risk than her checking account could carry. On the third day, the shaft completed a full turn. Ronald felt every inch of movement through the bar. He stopped twice to clean the bearing, then nodded for Christina to continue. The chalk mark passed its starting point. "Again," he said. The second turn was easier. They inspected the belts. One needed replacement, another could be tightened. Ronald opened the generator housing, checked the brushes, and found no visible break in the windings. "We can try a dry rotation," he said. They moved the belt by hand. The generator turned with a faint, steady hum. Martha looked at the old meter. The black numbers didn't change. No water, Ronald reminded her. No output. The following morning, Ronald brought the replacement belt. He also brought a portable meter to test voltage before anything reached the old wall equipment. They installed the belt, checked the gate controls, and cleared everyone from the moving parts. Ronald opened the intake gate only a little. Water entered the turbine housing. The wheel resisted, groaned, then began to turn. The belt moved overhead. Dust shook loose from a beam. Christina stepped back beside Martha, both of them watching the generator. Ronald checked the portable meter. "We have voltage." "How much?" Martha asked. "Not enough yet." He opened the gate another inch. The turbine settled into a rough rhythm. The generator hum deepened. A pulley that had been still for years began throwing light across the wall as it turned. Martha glanced at the original glass-fronted meter. The small metal disc inside it moved. At first she thought vibration had shaken it, then the black mark on the disc passed the window, disappeared, and returned. It was turning backward. "Ronald, I see it. Does that mean electricity is going out? It means the generator is pushing past this meter. I won't tell you where it goes until the cooperative checks the line." Christina gripped Martha's sleeve. "Dad kept this alive." "We don't know that yet," Martha said. But Raymond's ledger lay open on the work table, and the meter number written on the page matched the plate beneath the moving disc. Ronald closed the gate after less than a minute. The turbine slowed. The hum faded. The meter stopped. The room seemed larger when the machinery went quiet. Martha's phone rang in her coat pocket. The caller introduced herself as Kathleen Soto, operations manager for the Regional Electric Cooperative. She had received the request about an archived meter. "I found the old equipment number," Kathleen said. "Before I discuss any account history, I need to know who has access to that generator." Martha looked at the still belt, the damp turbine housing, and the fresh chalk mark on the shaft. "I do," she said. Kathleen's tone changed. "Then don't run it again until we've inspected the connection." Martha looked at Ronald. He reached for the gate control and placed a red tag through its handle. "It's shut," Martha told Kathleen. "We ran it for less than a minute. Was a qualified electrician present? A mill mechanic was present. That isn't the same thing." "No." Kathleen asked for the address, meter number, and the name shown on the ledger. She didn't confirm anything, except that the equipment number appeared in an archived index. "I'll come Thursday morning," she said. "Until then, keep the generator isolated. What should I have ready?" "Access to the meter, generator, and disconnects. If you have old cooperative bills, bring those too. I have the operating ledger. Bring it. A private ledger may help us locate records, but it isn't a cooperative record." Martha understood the distinction. Raymond could have written anything in his own book. The moving meter had proved the machinery could produce something. It hadn't proved anyone was required to buy it. After the call, Ronald inspected the generator line again. "We didn't hurt it," he said. "Could we have? We could hurt any machine by running it badly." "That isn't what she meant." "No. She meant the line beyond this wall belongs partly to somebody else." Christina crouched beside the meter. Why would Dad maintain a connection nobody recognized? Ronald removed his glasses and wiped them with a clean corner of his shirt. He believed records lasted longer than people. Sometimes he was right. "Did you ever see a cooperative employee here?" "Years ago." "Not lately?" "What did they do?" "Checked the meter, watched a test run. I kept my hands on the machinery and let Raymond handle the paperwork." Martha opened the ledger to the recent entries. The word standby appeared once each year, usually near the same season. Beside it, Raymond had written a payment amount, a check number, and initials. The amounts weren't large, but they continued through years when the millstones hadn't operated. She turned backward. The pattern continued. "Ronald, did he tell you what standby meant?" "He said it kept the account from dying." Christina straightened. "You knew that?" "I knew what he said. I didn't know the terms. Raymond didn't show me contracts." Martha studied the entries. "Did you witness the test runs?" "Most of them." "How often?" "Once a year after the mill closed. Sometimes twice if he replaced something." "You were here?" "I was standing about where you are." "Why didn't you tell me?" Ronald's face tightened. I assumed Raymond had. Martha wanted to blame him for that assumption. She couldn't. She had made the same kind for years. Raymond knew the machinery. Derek knew the accounts. Martha knew the family. Everyone had stayed in the lane assigned to them until the person in the center was gone. She copied the standby entries into her notebook. The oldest clear series began soon after Raymond bought the mill and continued without an obvious gap. "This goes back 33 years, she said. Ronald leaned over the page. He took the old arrangement with the property. "What arrangement?" "That's what Kathleen has to tell you." Martha called Derek from the loft. "I need copies of checks Raymond wrote to the electric cooperative." "What checks?" "Annual standby payments for the mill." Derek's chair creaked over the phone. He was probably in his office. "How much?" "Different amounts. The ledger lists check numbers." "Why was he paying standby charges on a disconnected building?" "I'm trying to find out." "Is this about the meter moving?" Martha looked toward Christina. "How do you know that?" "Christina mentioned it." Christina closed her eyes. She had told Derek during an early morning call about bakery deliveries. She hadn't understood that the short test needed to remain quiet. "I said we got part of the machinery moving," she said. Derek heard her. "You're both there?" "Yes," Martha said. "Is Ronald there too?" "He's downstairs. So 3 people are working on estate property without authorization. We're inspecting equipment. You replaced a belt. The old one couldn't be tested safely. Who paid for it?" "I did." Derek let out a slow breath. "This is exactly the problem. You hear one hopeful thing and start spending. I heard the generator produce voltage. You also heard the cooperative tell you not to run it. They're inspecting Thursday." That silenced him for half a second. "Who scheduled that?" "I did." "In whose name?" "Mine." The account was Dad's. "The request is mine." Derek began speaking more carefully. "Do not tell them you own the mill. I haven't. Do not sign a service agreement. I can read what I sign. I didn't say you couldn't. You asked what I do with bank records. That is not the same thing. It is from this side of the conversation." Christina moved toward the stairs to give Martha privacy. Martha motioned for her to stay. The mistake had already brought Derek into the room. Leaving now would only make the truth harder to sort. "Will you send the check copies?" Martha asked. "I don't have copies. You have the account statements. I have recent statements. Older checks may not be imaged. Send what you have. I need to talk to the executor, then talk to him. You're creating estate expenses and outside contacts he doesn't know about. The estate hasn't paid for my work. That may make it worse. If the property is distributed differently, you could claim reimbursement. I won't." "You say that now?" Martha gripped the phone. "I asked for records, Derek. I didn't ask you to explain me to myself." He was quiet. "I'll look for the payments," he said. "Thank you." After the call ended, Christina put both hands on the table. "I'm sorry. Why did you tell him?" "He called about a delivery for a meeting. He asked where I was, and I said we got the turbine moving. I thought he'd be glad. He hasn't been glad about the mill once. He was glad Dad stopped spending on it." Martha closed the ledger. "Then, from now on, you ask before discussing work here." Christina's face changed. "You don't trust me?" "I trust you. I don't trust what happens after information leaves this room." "That sounds like Derek." "No. Derek would tell you not to come." The answer was firm enough to hurt and fair enough that Christina accepted it. "All right," she said. "I'll ask." It was their first boundary around the mill. Martha didn't enjoy setting it. She enjoyed even less that it was needed. On Thursday, Kathleen arrived in a white cooperative truck, carrying a hard case, insulated gloves, and a clipboard. Her gray hair was cut close at the neck, and she wore clear safety glasses on a cord. She shook hands with Martha, Christina, and Ronald, then pointed to the red tag on the gate control. "Who placed that?" "I did," Ronald said. "Good." Kathleen began outside. She photographed the line entering the mill, checked the pole number, and traced the conduit to the meter. She didn't discuss accounts while she worked. Inside, she opened the disconnect panel and found dust, old labels, and a dead spider between 2 fuses. "This equipment predates our current standards," she said. "Does that mean it has to be removed?" Martha asked. "It means I'm still inspecting." She tested the line on both sides of the disconnect. Then she read the number from the meter plate and compared it with Martha's request. "The equipment number matches what you gave us." Martha felt a small release in her chest. "So, it's the same meter. It's the same physical meter listed in the archived index. That doesn't tell us the present status of any agreement." Kathleen inspected the generator, checked its grounding, and asked Ronald to rotate the shaft by hand. He did. "You had voltage during the test?" she asked. Ronald gave the reading from his portable meter. "And the disc reversed?" "Yes." Kathleen wrote both down. "Could it have been back-feeding the line?" Martha asked. "Not beyond the open disconnect." Ronald looked at the panel. "It was open?" "It is now, and the oxidation suggests it has been open a long time." Christina frowned. "Then why did the meter move?" "The meter sits between the generator and this disconnect. The generator pushed electricity through the meter, but not out to our distribution line. The discovery was useful and disappointing at once. The turbine and generator worked together. The old meter responded exactly as Raymond had recorded, but no electricity had reached a buyer. Kathleen placed a temporary cooperative lock on the disconnect. This stays open until the generator passes a formal interconnection inspection. "What does that require?" Martha asked. "A safe disconnect, updated protective controls, and proof of whatever interconnection terms you believe apply." Martha brought the ledger from the work table. Kathleen didn't touch it until she removed her gloves. "These are Raymond's entries?" "Yes." Kathleen read several pages. Her attention sharpened at the annual standby payments. "Do these initials mean anything to you?" "No. They may be employee initials, or they may be Raymond's own notation. There are check numbers. That helps." Ronald witnessed the annual tests. "That helps too, but a witness doesn't establish contract terms." Ronald nodded. He had no objection to the limit of what he knew. Kathleen copied the old account number and 3 check numbers. "Our digital system only goes back so far. Anything older may be stored by account class, not customer name." "How long will it take?" Martha asked. "I can request the archive box. No promise it still contains what you need." "What exactly do I need?" "A record showing the account remained active, the interconnection attached to this site, and the conditions for reactivation. Would the payments show that? They might direct us to it." Kathleen returned the ledger. "Until then, you have a functioning generator with no approved path to sell power. Don't confuse production with permission." Martha looked at the lock on the disconnect. The test had opened one question and physically closed another. "What can I do while you search? Make the machinery safe. Obtain a licensed electrical estimate, and establish who has authority over the property. I can inspect equipment for safety, but I can't offer terms to someone who may not receive the mill." After Kathleen left, Christina walked around the locked disconnect. "If the account exists, what would the electricity be worth?" Ronald answered before Martha could. "That depends on terms none of us have seen. I'm asking because flour milling uses power too. If the turbine runs the stones and sends extra electricity out, the mill might support itself." Martha looked at her. "Is that why you've been helping?" "It's one reason." Christina didn't soften it. "My flour costs keep rising. Customers ask where the grain comes from, and I don't have a good answer. If this mill can grind local wheat dependably, I want to buy from it. You could have said that earlier. I didn't know the machinery could turn earlier." The directness relieved Martha and placed another weight on her. Christina wasn't only protecting her, she was beginning to plan around the mill. Martha's phone signaled an email. Derek had sent 6 bank statements. 3 showed checks matching Raymond's ledger entries. He had included a note beneath the attachments. "I found the payments. We need to discuss why Dad kept sending them and whether you're in a position to continue." Martha printed the statements from Christina's bakery office and laid them beside the ledger. The dates, check numbers, and amounts matched. Raymond's private record now had support from the bank. It still didn't show what he had purchased. Martha sent the 3 matching entries to Kathleen. Then she asked the roofer for a permanent repair estimate, called an electrician, and moved the tax deadline to the top of her notebook. By evening, Derek had requested a meeting with the executor about Martha's spending and access to the mill. The meeting was set for Monday afternoon. Until then, the executor asked both of them to avoid decisions that would change the estate's value. Derek interpreted that as an order to stop work. Martha read it as an order to keep records. She began a separate expense book for the mill. She entered the belt, pipe fitting, roof tarp, Ronald's inspection, safety rope, and electrical estimate. Beside each item, she wrote paid personally. She scanned every receipt at the bakery and emailed copies to herself. The electrician arrived Friday morning. He spent 2 hours tracing the old wiring. Most of the generator circuit was intact, but the protective controls didn't meet current cooperative standards. The disconnect needed replacement. Grounding had to be improved. Two sections of cable showed cracked insulation. He gave Martha an estimate that used most of the money remaining in her personal savings. That doesn't include repairs inside the generator, he said. Ronald believes the generator is sound. Then you may be lucky. And if I do only the safety work? That is the safety work. Martha folded the estimate. How soon could you start? Once the property owner signs. The estate still holds it. Then the executor signs. Martha thanked him and walked him outside. Christina had been listening from the gristmill floor. She came up behind Martha as the electrician's truck disappeared around the bend. How bad? Martha handed her the estimate. Christina read the total. You can't pay this. I can. Then you can't pay for anything else. That's different. No, that is exactly what can't means. Martha took the paper back. I'm not signing today. You were thinking about it. I think about every bill before I pay it. You also spent 30 years making sure other people didn't know when money was tight. Martha turned toward the mill. Your father and I managed. Dad managed the accounts. You stretched whatever he gave you. That was our arrangement. Was it? The question followed Martha inside. She carried a bucket of tools toward the turbine room. Ronald had asked her to bring down the smaller wrenches. The bucket wasn't heavy, but the handle pulled at her shoulder. Halfway down the concrete steps, pain ran sharply from the joint into her upper arm. Her hand opened. The bucket struck a step. Wrenches scattered into the turbine room. Ronald looked up. Don't move. I dropped a bucket. I saw. Martha held her left arm close to her body. Christina reached the stairs behind her. What happened? Nothing tore. It caught. You don't know that? I know this shoulder. Christina helped her sit on the lower step. Ronald collected the tools without comment. The pain eased after several minutes, then returned when Martha tried to stand. She could move her fingers. She could bend her elbow. Raising the arm was another matter. Christina picked up Martha's coat. We're going to urgent care. That will take all afternoon. Yes. Ronald is here. Ronald knows how to leave a building. He put the tools into the bucket. I've done it before. The clinic took an X-ray and found no new break. The doctor called it a severe strain around an old injury. Martha was told not to lift, pull, climb, or brace weight with that arm for at least 2 weeks. She left with a stronger sling, printed exercises, and a bill she didn't open until they reached the bakery. Christina read the total upside down. That goes in the mill expense book, too. No, it happened at the mill. It happened because I carried badly. That is the same habit in a different coat. Martha tucked the bill into her handbag. At the apartment, she tried to remove her sweater with one hand. The fabric caught around her head. Christina helped without speaking. Martha sat on the sofa in her undershirt, while Christina filled an ice pack. I don't need you to watch me all evening. I live here. I mean, I can manage. I know. Christina wrapped the ice pack in a towel and handed it to her. Martha rested it against her shoulder. The cold hurt before it helped. What if the mill is too much? Christina asked. Martha looked toward the shelf where the ledger stood. Too much for what? For you to live there and run it. Those are two separate questions. They use the same body. Martha didn't answer. Christina sat at the kitchen table. I want the mill to work. I told you that. But I don't want it badly enough to watch you break yourself proving Derek wrong. That isn't what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? Martha opened her mouth and found no clean answer. At first she had wanted to look because Derek had already decided. Then she had wanted the shaft to move because he called the machinery useless. Each useful result had pulled her farther in. She still pictured Derek making space for her at the house. Some part of her believed that if she proved she was capable, careful, and right, he would see her again as his mother instead of a problem attached to the estate. That hope had kept her arguing on his terms. I wanted to know why Raymond kept the place, she said, and now I know he wasn't simply keeping it. The ledger contained work, payments, tests, and 33 years of attention. Whatever the cooperative arrangement turned out to be, Raymond had treated it as an obligation. Christina looked at the sling. You don't inherit an obligation by injuring yourself. No, good. You inherit it by deciding whether it should continue. Christina waited. Martha lifted the clinic bill with her right hand. This is the last mill expense I hide inside my household money. What does that mean? It means I don't spend another dollar until I know whether this can support itself. It means I ask what the bakery would actually buy, not what you hope to buy. It means Ronald doesn't work for friendship wages. And it means I don't carry tool buckets. Christina leaned back. That last one may be the hardest. It may. Kathleen called late that afternoon. The bank statements had allowed her to locate a second archive reference. It pointed to an account class no longer offered to new generators. What kind of account? Martha asked. I can't confirm the terms until I have the original records. Can you tell me why Raymond made standby payments? Generally, a standby payment keeps equipment or account rights available during periods without regular production. Account rights? Generally, Kathleen repeated. I'm not describing yours yet. Martha glanced at Christina. If the records match, would the arrangement belong to Raymond? It would normally attach to the generating site, subject to its terms and a change in ownership. The mill. Yes. Not his checking account. Correct. The answer changed the size of the problem. Derek had treated the mill as a damaged building that should be separated from money. Raymond may have preserved something that only had meaning if the building, turbine, meter, and account stayed together. Can it be moved to another property? Martha asked. An old site-specific interconnection generally can't be picked up and moved. Can it be divided between owners? That depends on the ownership and contract. Please don't build plans around general answers. When will you have the records? The archive box is stored off-site. I requested retrieval for next week. The tax deadline is running. That is outside the cooperative's role. I know. Kathleen paused. One more thing. Don't replace the original meter before I finish the review. Update the safety controls around it, but leave the number plate and meter in place. Martha wrote that down. Thank you. After the call, Christina pulled a flour order from her bakery binder. I buy this much each month, she said, more before holidays. Martha studied the figures. What kind of grain? Hard red wheat for bread flour, soft white for pastry. Rye when I can get it at a sane price. Would the Stones handle all three? That's Ronald's question. Would you sign an order agreement? Christina hesitated. I'd sign one based on quality tests and regular delivery. Not because I'm family, especially not because you're family. Martha nodded. That was the answer she needed. Monday's meeting took place in the executor's office. Derek arrived early and arranged his papers in a straight line. Martha brought the ledger, her expense book, the electrician's estimate, and the clinic bill. Derek noticed the sling. What happened? I strained my shoulder. At the mill? Yes. He looked toward the executor. This is what I'm talking about. Martha removed her coat carefully. The executor asked Derek to explain his concern. Derek presented the mill estimate, tax balance, repair expenses, and the cooperative lock on the disconnect. He spoke without exaggeration. He didn't need to exaggerate. On paper, Martha had spent money, injured herself, and begun investigating a dormant generator on property she didn't yet own. When he finished, the executor turned to Martha. Do you dispute those facts? No. Derek looked surprised. Martha opened her expense book. I paid these costs personally. I'm not asking the estate to reimburse them. You may have preserved estate property, the executor said. I may have. I'm still waiving reimbursement for the expenses listed. Derek shifted in his chair. Why would you do that? So you can't use my spending to claim I'm taking money from the estate. That isn't my only concern. I know. She gave the executor the electrician's estimate. I won't authorize this work without written estate approval. I'm asking permission to perform safety repairs only, using my funds, while the cooperative reviews the old account. The executor read the estimate. Why continue if you don't know the account has value? Because the generator works, the meter matches Raymond's ledger, and the bank confirms the standby payments, Derek interrupted. That still doesn't mean the arrangement is active. No. It means the question deserves an answer. What if the answer is no? Then I decide whether a working gristmill and loft are worth the taxes and repair costs. You? Yes. The executor looked between them. Is this a request to receive the mill under the estate distribution? Martha had thought she wanted the mill only if it proved Derek wrong. That was no longer enough. She didn't want a prize for winning an argument. She wanted the right to decide what Raymond's work would become. Yes, she said. I'm asking for Jennings Mill, with its equipment, records, and obligations kept together. Derek stared at her. And the house? He asked. Martha felt the old wish rise, the wish for him to say that the house remained hers because she belonged there. I want my lawful share handled correctly, she said, but I'm not trading my decision about the mill for a room in that house. The executor approved only temporary safety work and required written records of every change. No equipment could be removed. No contract could be signed before distribution. It was less authority than Martha wanted, and more than Derek had expected her to receive. Outside the office, he caught up with her near the stairs. "You're choosing a building over security." "No. I'm finding out whether everybody has been calling the wrong thing security." She continued down carefully, one hand on the rail. By the time she reached the street, the house no longer felt like the thing she had to win. The mill had become the place she intended to make capable of keeping her. The next morning, Martha opened a checking account in her name for mill expenses. She deposited enough to cover the approved safety work and nothing more. The account kept her household money separate. It also gave her a clean record if Derek challenged another purchase. At the mill, she taped an access sheet beside the loading door. Everyone signed in, including Martha. Each repair received a date, cost, and reason. Ronald studied the clipboard. "You planning to charge admission?" "I'm planning to remember who did what. I remember. The executor may not take your word for it. He may not take yours either. That's why we're writing it down." Martha placed the expense book in a locking metal file box and kept the ledger with her. She no longer left it on the mill table when she went upstairs. Ronald noticed that too. "Derek after the book?" He asked what was in it. "That isn't the same thing." "No, but it may become the same thing." The electrician returned after the executor signed approval for the safety work. He replaced cracked cable, improved the grounding, and installed new protective controls without removing the old meter. Kathleen's cooperative lock remained on the distribution disconnect. Martha watched from a chair because Ronald and Christina had agreed that the sling didn't make her a supervisor with lifting privileges. She used the time to study the ledger. Raymond's entries separated the mill into systems: water, turbine, generator, stones, storage, account. Each section referred to the others, but not in the way Derek would have understood. The mill wasn't a collection of equipment. One working part made the next part useful. Near the back, Martha found milling notes from the last year Raymond had produced flour. He had recorded stone spacing, grain moisture, belt speed, and the temperature of the flour as it left the chute. She showed the pages to Ronald. "Could we turn the stones without connecting the generator?" He looked at her over his glasses. "You mean isolate the generator belt and use the turbine for the main shaft?" "Do I?" "Yes." "Could we?" Ronald walked to the overhead drive and traced the belt path with one finger. "The cooperative lock keeps us off their line. It doesn't own the water or the stones. We'd need to confirm the generator stays isolated. The electrician can confirm it. We'd also need to clean the grain path. Mice have had the lease for years. Christina can bring grain. Good grain costs money. She'll invoice the mill account." Ronald smiled faintly. "You came prepared to ask. I came prepared to do it correctly." The electrician confirmed the generator could remain mechanically isolated. He removed its drive belt, tagged the pulley, and tested that the protective controls stayed open. Kathleen approved the arrangement by email with one warning. Any test of the generator required her presence until the account review was complete. Martha printed the email and placed it in the file box. Christina arrived carrying a sealed bag of hard red wheat and a written purchase proposal. The bakery would buy a small weekly amount if the mill produced flour that met her quality tests. The agreement depended on consistent grinding, safe handling, and reliable delivery. Martha read every line. "You didn't make this easy. You told me not to make it. Family. I did. Do you still want it?" "Yes." They both signed. Christina paid for the test grain from the bakery account. Martha issued a receipt from the mill expense book. It was only one bag, and no flour had been produced yet. But the exchange made the work different. The mill had its first customer on paper. For 4 days, they cleaned. Martha's shoulder kept her from lifting screens and grain bins, so she inspected, measured, and assigned work. At first, giving instructions felt like pretending to work. Then Ronald brought her a worn leather drive strap and asked whether to replace or shorten it. Martha checked Raymond's measurements. Shorten it by 1 hole first. He wrote that a new strap pulled the upper shaft out of line. Ronald compared the ledger note with the bearing wear. He was right. They shortened the strap. The upper shaft turned without rubbing. It was a small decision, but Ronald stopped checking every instruction against his own memory after that. Christina scrubbed the wooden flour chute with food-safe cleaner. Ronald removed the lower stone housing and vacuumed out old grain dust. Martha examined the sifter cloth and found 2 tiers. She ordered replacement cloth, but repaired a third section Raymond had marked as temporary years earlier. You can do that one-handed? Christina asked. I can sew one-handed. I can't thread the needle one-handed. Christina threaded it and passed it back. Martha's stitches were small and even. She had mended Derek's work shirts the same way when he was young, then Raymond's mill aprons, then Christina's oven mitts. The skill hadn't changed because the place had. On the 5th morning, the mill was clean enough for a dry test. Ronald opened the water gate a fraction. The turbine turned. The main shaft moved overhead. One empty stone housing began to rotate. A belt slapped once against a guide. Martha raised her hand. Stop! Ronald closed the gate. The belt had shifted near the splice. They adjusted the guide and tried again. This time, the belt ran true. Christina stood near the grain hopper with her arms folded. How long do we watch it spin before we trust it? We don't trust it, Ronald said. We watch until we know what it does wrong. They ran the empty system for 10 minutes. A bearing near the sifter grew warm, but not hot. The drive strap held. The old wooden floor carried the vibration without movement near the marked rotten board. Martha wrote every result in the new expense book, not Raymond's ledger. That book is for his work, she explained when Ronald asked. This one starts with hours. They stopped for lunch in the loft. The roofer had replaced the worst shingles and repaired the damaged ceiling corner. The permanent roof cost more than the tarp, but it stayed within the safety work the Executor had approved. The loft sink worked. An inspector had cleared the stove and chimney for use after a cracked stovepipe section was replaced. Martha had not moved in. Her sling remained, and climbing the stairs at night without reliable lighting was unwise. Still, she brought 2 of her own mugs from the house and placed them beside Raymond's 4. Derek hadn't responded to her written request for a time to collect the rest of her personal property. She no longer called to remind him. The next test used grain. Christina poured a small amount of wheat into the hopper while Ronald controlled the gate. The stones turned too slowly at first. Whole kernels passed into the chute. More water, Martha said. Ronald opened the gate slightly. The stones picked up speed. Their low grinding sound filled the room, rough at first, then steadier. Flour began falling into the collection bin. It was coarse and gray, mixed with particles left from the first pass. Christina took a sample between her fingers. Not usable? Ronald reached for the stone adjustment. Bring them closer. Not yet, Martha said. She checked Raymond's notes. He made 3 cleaning passes before quality testing after a long shutdown. With good grain? Christina asked. He wrote sweep grain. We don't have sweep grain. We have the first batch. They ran the coarse flour through twice more. Each pass cleaned the chute and showed them where dust had remained. On the 4th pass, Ronald adjusted the stone spacing. Martha watched the flour temperature with a kitchen thermometer. Christina sifted a sample and added water in a bowl. The dough came together beneath her fingers. It's warm, she said. Too warm? Martha asked. Not yet. They reduced the water flow slightly and ran the final portion. The flour emerged pale brown and fine enough to hold together when Christina squeezed it. She measured it into paper sacks and labeled each one, test only. I'm baking with this tonight. Will you sell it? Martha asked. Not until I see the crumb. What if it's poor? We change the grind. Ronald shut the water gate. The stones slowed to silence. Martha stood beside the collection bin. She had expected the first flour to feel like an answer. Instead, it felt like a list of new questions. Quality, output, cleaning, grain supply, insurance, and how many hours her body could spend in the building. But the mill had performed useful work without touching the cooperative line. The following morning, Christina carried 2 loaves upstairs to the apartment. One had collapsed slightly in the center. The other stood high, with a dark crust and an even interior. She cut the good loaf on the kitchen table. Martha pressed the crumb with one finger. It sprang back. Flavor? Christina asked. They tasted it without butter. The bread was nutty and a little coarse. It needed a finer final pass, but it tasted fresh in a way bagged flour rarely did. Christina ate another slice. I can sell this. Not this batch. No, this batch belongs to us. She placed half the loaf in a paper bag for Ronald. At the bakery, she set the remaining test loaf behind the counter beside a small card. Milled at Jennings Mill. Martha removed the card. Not yet. It's true. It looks like advertising. It looks like bread. We don't have regular output, inspection, or insurance. Christina considered that, then rewrote the card. Equipment test, not for sale. Martha left it in place. Several customers asked about it during the morning. Christina answered only that they were testing the old mill. She didn't promise a product date. By noon, the loaf was gone from the cutting board. The questions continued. Derek arrived near closing. He carried an envelope containing copies of Martha's personal property list. His gaze moved from the flour dust on Christina's apron to the handwritten card beside the empty board. "You're selling mill flour?" "No," Martha said. "We ran an equipment test at estate property with written safety approval to repair, not operate a business." "There is no business yet." Christina set a tray beneath the counter. "The bakery purchased test grain." Derek looked at her. "So, you have a financial interest now. I have a conditional purchase agreement." "With Mom?" "With the mill project." Derek placed the envelope on the counter. "You realize what this looks like?" Martha didn't ask what he meant. That question belonged to the version of her that still wanted him to approve the view. "It looks like a working stone-produced flour," she said. "If the mill has commercial potential, it changes the estate valuation. It should. And distribution. Then the estimate should be corrected." Derek had expected her to protect the low number once it benefited her. Her answer gave him nothing to expose except that the mill might be worth keeping. He picked up the test card and read it again. "The executor needs to know you've moved beyond preservation. Send him the access log, invoices, test report, and Christina's agreement. Send all of it. You're giving me permission? I'm giving you records." Derek set the card down. His attention shifted to the locked file box beneath the bakery desk. "Where is Dad's ledger?" "With me?" "I need a copy." "For what?" "To understand what you're building this around." Martha picked up the envelope he had brought. "I'll provide copies of relevant pages to the executor. I asked for the ledger, and I answered." Derek left without buying bread. Martha watched him cross the sidewalk and stop beside his car to make a call. The first useful flour had given the mill a customer, a record, and visible purpose. It had also shown Derek exactly where to press. The call was to the executor. By 10 the next morning, Martha received an email directing everyone to stop mechanical tests at the mill. The executor had also asked the cooperative to pause any account discussion until the estate clarified who could act for the property. Martha read the message twice. Christina read it over her shoulder. "Derek told them you were running a business. He told them enough true things to make it sound that way. You had permission for safety work, not for grinding flour. We tested repaired equipment, with grain purchased by your bakery." Christina pulled out a chair. "So, we answer that. We will." Ronald arrived at the mill before Martha could call him. Derek's car was parked across the loading entrance. Martha and Christina found them inside. Derek stood beside the access sheet. Ronald held his cane in one hand and the key to the turbine room in the other. "I'm not giving you this key," Ronald said. "It belongs with the mill. It belongs on Martha's ring. The estate owns the mill." Martha crossed the floor. "What are you doing here?" Derek turned, documenting the current condition. "Who let you in?" "I have Dad's spare key." Martha looked at Ronald. "He was already inside when I got here," Ronald said. Derek lifted his phone. "I photographed the replacement controls, new belt, repaired chute, grain bin, and paperwork by the door. I also photographed the loft." Martha's attention sharpened. "You went upstairs? It's part of the property. My clothes are there. 2 mugs and a sweater. That wasn't an invitation. You aren't living here. That doesn't give you the right to search the room." "I didn't search anything. You counted." Derek put the phone into his pocket. "The executor asked for current information. He asked us to stop operating. He didn't ask you to inventory my sweater." Derek looked toward the access sheet. "You've treated this place as yours from the beginning. I treated it as something worth examining. And now it has repair work, a customer agreement, and possible electrical rights nobody included in the estate value. Possible. That word protects you until it doesn't." Ronald placed the turbine key in Martha's right hand. Derek watched him. "This isn't your family matter, Ronald." "No. It's machinery I maintained for more years than you visited. I'm not arguing about history. That's because it doesn't help you." Martha closed her fingers around the key. "Enough." Both men stopped. She looked at Derek. "Did you contact Kathleen?" "I contacted the cooperative's office and told them Dad's estate still owns the site." "Did you tell them I had executor approval for safety work?" "I sent the approval." "Did you tell them the executor knew I was investigating the account?" "I told them there was a dispute. There hadn't been a dispute about the cooperative review until Derek created one. Still, Martha couldn't say he had lied. She didn't own the mill yet. Kathleen had warned her that authority mattered. "What do you want?" Martha asked. "I want all work stopped until the property is valued properly. You wanted it sold for $28,000 before you found working equipment and an old account. So now you agree the first estimate was incomplete. I agree you may have changed the property. The turbine was there, the meter was there, Raymond's payments were there, and none of it was producing income. It still isn't. Christina plans to buy flour." Christina stepped forward, after testing, insurance, and regular output. "Read the agreement." "I did." "Then don't call a condition an income stream." Derek faced Martha again. "You refused the buyer because he might know something you didn't. Now you're doing the same thing to the estate." The sentence landed because part of it was fair. Martha had guarded the ledger. She had shared relevant pages with Kathleen and offered copies to the executor, but she hadn't delivered the full book. She told herself she was protecting Raymond's record from Derek's carelessness. She was also protecting the mill's low valuation, while she learned whether it held something valuable. The two motives had become difficult to separate. Derek picked up his coat. "The executor wants the keys held in his office until Monday's review." Martha looked at the ring in her hand. "I haven't received that instruction." "You will." Derek left through the loading door. Ronald waited until his car pulled away. "He's afraid you found something. He's afraid I found something without him." Christina signed the access sheet beside her arrival time. "Is there a difference?" To Derek, yes. Martha walked upstairs. Nothing had been disturbed. The sweater remained over the back of the chair. Her two mugs stood beside Raymond's four. The blankets were folded in the cedar chest. Derek had done exactly what he claimed. He had looked and photographed. That didn't make the room feel less entered. Martha packed the sweater into a paper bag and removed the framed photograph she had brought from the house. She left the mugs. Downstairs, the cooperative lock remained secure. The generator belt was still tagged and disconnected. The new controls waited beside a meter that had turned backward for less than a minute and managed to change every conversation around it. Kathleen called at noon. "I'm sorry," she said. "I can't release account information while authority is disputed." "Did you receive the archive box?" "Yes." "Is the record there?" "I can't discuss contents." "You were discussing it with me yesterday." "Yesterday I understood you were acting for the property with estate approval." "I have approval for safety work, not for account decisions." "I haven't made an account decision." "No, but if I disclose terms, I may affect an estate dispute." Martha sat at Raymond's work table. "What would allow you to continue? Written authorization from the executor or completed distribution to the new owner? The tax deadline may come first. I understand the timing is difficult." "No, you understand the sentence. I'm the one with the deadline." Kathleen accepted that without defending herself. "If the executor authorizes the review, I can compare the site records, ledger entries, and archive. Will you need the original ledger? For authentication, I'll need to inspect it." "A copy is enough for the preliminary match." "Thank you." After the call, Martha emailed the executor. She requested written authorization for Kathleen to complete the review without offering or signing any agreement. She attached the cooperative correspondence, electrical estimate, bank statements, access log, and Christina's conditional purchase proposal. She did not attach the whole ledger. The executor replied that all interested parties would meet Monday. Until then, the mechanical stop remained in effect. Martha could enter only to prevent damage or retrieve personal property. The keys were to be deposited with his office by 5 that afternoon. Ronald objected when she told him. "Raymond asked you to keep the book with the mill things. The book is coming with me. I mean the keys. Those go to the executor." Derek pushed him into this. "The executor is responsible for the property, and you're responsible for letting people know when a rule is foolish. I can do that Monday." Ronald looked at the silent machinery. "You lose 3 days." "I know. Water is good now. Bearings are clean. Leaving it won't hurt anything, but we lose 3 days." Martha wrote the shutdown time on the access sheet. "No one enters without the executor's permission. Not Derek, not us." Ronald's anger eased slightly. "That part I like." They locked the turbine room, loft, office, and loading door. Martha took photographs of each lock and emailed them to the executor. At 5 minutes before 5, she placed the key ring in a sealed envelope on his receptionist's desk. Derek's spare key was already there in a second envelope. The equal restriction should have felt like a victory. Instead, Martha thought of the water channel moving beside a mill nobody could legally operate. At the bakery that evening, her shoulder ached beneath the sling. Christina set a bowl of soup in front of her. Would it help if I canceled the purchase proposal? No, it's part of Derek's argument. It's also honest. He'll say I'm using you. Are you? No. Then don't cancel it because he found a way to make ordinary business sound shameful. Christina sat down. What will you give the Executor Monday? Everything relevant. That isn't the whole ledger. No. Why not? Martha looked toward the shelf where the black book rested. Because Raymond asked me to protect it, from damage or from Derek. He didn't say. That is convenient. Martha met her eyes. Christina didn't withdraw the words. If you want the mill valued fairly, she said, you can't decide which facts count as fair. I know. Do you? Martha carried the soup to the kitchen table. She opened the ledger and worked through it from the first page. The earliest entries documented the meter number, account reference, and annual output tests. Later pages recorded standby checks. Raymond had written employee initials beside several visits. Ronald's name appeared beside repeated maintenance runs. Nothing in the book promised Martha ownership. Nothing said Derek should be excluded. It was a property record, not a private letter. Near the center, Raymond had written one sentence beneath a set of test figures. Keep continuous. Rights follow working site. Martha read it aloud. Christina pulled her chair closer. Does that mean the account? It might mean the whole system. If the rights follow the site, hiding the book could damage them. Yes. And showing it could raise the mill's value beyond what your share covers. Yes. The Executor could distribute the mill differently. Derek could argue for sale at a corrected price. If Martha disclosed enough to prove the arrangement, she might make the property harder for herself to receive. If she withheld the record, Kathleen couldn't authenticate the account. The mill would remain a damaged building with a working generator locked away from the line. Martha removed her expense receipts from between the ledger pages. She placed the book by itself inside the canvas bag. Then she emailed the Executor again. On Monday, she would provide the complete ledger for inspection. She requested that Kathleen and Ronald attend the later formal estate review if the records proved relevant. Christina read the message before Martha sent it. You're giving Derek the same information. I'm giving the estate the truth. And if that costs you the mill, then I'll know I didn't destroy what Raymond maintained just to make it cheap enough for me. Martha pressed send. The message left her screen, carrying the one record that could increase her power or remove the property from her reach. Monday morning, the canvas bag stayed beside Martha's chair until the Executor asked for it. Derek sat across the table. His own folder contained the original low estimate, photographs from the mill, and printouts of Christina's purchase proposal. The Executor opened the ledger carefully. Who has maintained possession of this since Raymond's death? I have, Martha said. Was it stored at the mill? It was in his tool chest at the house when he died. I carried it to the mill during inspections, then kept it with me. Has anyone altered it? No. Ronald wasn't present. Kathleen wasn't either. This meeting had one purpose: deciding whether the cooperative could examine estate records and the site without creating an unauthorized agreement. Derek asked to have the ledger copied. Martha agreed, provided the original returned to her after inspection, and a complete copy went to every interested party. The Executor looked at Derek. Any objection? No. He had expected Martha to resist. Her agreement removed his easiest argument. The Executor authorized Kathleen to complete the account review, supervise one generator test, and prepare a factual report. No purchase agreement could be signed before the mill's ownership was settled. He also returned one set of mill keys to Martha. Access is for inspection and preservation, he said. No commercial production. I understand. Derek asked for a second set. The Executor shook his head. Until the review is complete, access will be logged through Mrs. Jennings. You may attend scheduled inspections. Martha didn't smile. The decision gave her a duty, not possession. Kathleen arrived at the Executor's office that afternoon to inspect the ledger. She brought copies from the cooperative archive in a flat brown folder. She placed Raymond's ledger beside the first cooperative sheet and read the meter numbers aloud. They matched. The original account number matched too. Kathleen moved through the years slowly, Some records were missing, but the surviving ones formed a continuous chain. Standby invoices appeared at regular intervals. Raymond's check numbers matched the bank statements Martha had supplied. Several output readings matched entries signed by cooperative employees. Ronald joined them for the maintenance pages. Kathleen pointed to one entry. "Were you present for this test?" Ronald read the date. "Yes." "How can you be certain?" "I replaced the lower bearing seal that morning. Raymond complained I charged him for 4 hours when I only worked 3.5. Did he pay the 4? No, he paid 3.5. Kathleen checked the service invoice in the archive folder. 3.5. Ronald settled back in his chair. He was consistent. Derek turned several copied pages. Consistent about what exactly? Kathleen answered him directly. Maintaining the site's generating equipment and preserving an older interconnection account through standby payments and periodic tests. Is it active? It has not been closed in the archive. That isn't what I asked. It is the answer I can give before the live test. Can the account be transferred? Not by itself. To a new owner? With the mill, if the conditions are met. Derek glanced at Martha. What conditions? The generating equipment must operate safely. The original site and meter history must remain identifiable. The owner must accept the account obligations. What obligations? Maintenance, inspection access, safe operation, and continued compliance. This isn't a check someone collects for owning a building. Martha heard that clearly. Whatever value existed would require work after the estate meeting, not just proof before it. Kathleen closed the archive folder. The remaining uncertainty is whether the mill can produce through the approved connection under present conditions. We already produced voltage, Ronald said. You produced behind an open disconnect. Now we test the complete path under cooperative control. The supervised test was scheduled for Wednesday. On Tuesday, the electrician returned to check every change. Ronald inspected the turbine and main bearing. Martha recorded the work from a chair on the grist mill floor, her left arm still in the sling. Derek attended for less than an hour. He walked through the loft again, this time with Martha beside him. You plan to live here? He asked. If the mill comes to me, there's one bedroom, I need one. No proper kitchen. There will be. How much will that cost? I'm collecting estimates. With what money? My concern. If the property has a valuable account, it becomes an estate concern. The account pays for output, not intentions. He looked through the window toward the river. You could still sell. Yes, that surprised him. You'd consider it? I consider every honest offer. I can speak to buyers who understand power assets. After the account is verified and the property is appraised, that lowers flexibility. It raises information. Derek left without watching Ronald open the bearing cover. Wednesday morning was clear and cold. Kathleen brought a cooperative technician who performed the line work and left after the test. He didn't enter the family discussion. The distribution line was isolated while he checked the new disconnect. Kathleen compared the meter plate with the archive once more, photographed the safety controls, and placed a calibrated testing device beside the old glass meter. Ronald stood at the turbine gate. Christina waited near the flower chute, though the stones had been disengaged. Martha held the ledger open to Raymond's latest output page. Derek remained by the loading door. Kathleen reviewed the procedure. Ronald opens the gate in stages. I control the interconnection. If I raise my hand, he closes immediately. Nobody touches moving equipment. Everyone agreed. The cooperative technician restored the test path. Kathleen nodded to Ronald. He opened the gate. Water entered the turbine. The wheel began turning, then the shaft. The generator belt moved steadily over its pulley. Kathleen watched her instruments. Hold there. Ronald stopped moving the gate. The original meter disc began to turn backward. This time, the new controls were closed under Kathleen's supervision. Electricity crossed the meter and entered the cooperative test path. Kathleen read the output aloud. Martha compared it with Raymond's past figures. It was lower than his best years, but it fell within the range he had recorded during maintenance runs. Open another inch, Kathleen said. Ronald did. The generator deepened into a steady hum. The output rose. Martha wrote the reading in her new expense book. She didn't write in Raymond's ledger. Kathleen watched for 5 minutes, then raised her hand. Ronald closed the gate. The turbine slowed. The meter disc stopped. The technician isolated the line again. Kathleen inspected the generator housing for heat and checked the controls for faults. None appeared. Successful output test, she said. Christina let out the breath she had been holding. Derek stepped away from the loading door. What does that establish? Kathleen removed her safety glasses. The meter history, account number, payment record, and live output all match the grandfathered interconnection in our archive. And its value? I don't appraise real estate. Will the cooperative buy electricity? Once the mill passes final inspection and the owner accepts the preserved account terms, I can offer reactivation of electricity purchases under that account. Martha kept her hand on the open expense book. Can Derek operate the account if I own the mill? Only if you formally authorize him to act for you. Can he claim part of it separately through the estate? The cooperative recognizes the mill owner. We don't divide a site interconnection among relatives. There it was, simple enough to fit in one sentence. The account belonged with the working site. Control followed ownership and competent operation. It didn't decide who would inherit the mill. That remained for the will and estate process. But it removed the uncertainty that had allowed Derek to call the account a notebook theory. Kathleen prepared a preliminary confirmation letter before leaving. It listed the meter, account, matched records, and successful output test. The offer itself would wait for ownership and final inspection. The appraiser received the confirmation that afternoon. He told the executor the first estimate could no longer be used. He needed to value the mill as a functioning generating site with milling equipment, not land awaiting demolition. Christina read Kathleen's letter twice at the bakery. Don't send this to Derek until the formal meeting, she said. He attended the test. He doesn't have the written confirmation. He'll receive it from the executor. Let him arrive with his $25,000 estimate. For once, let him be the person who doesn't know what everyone else knows. Martha understood the temptation. Derek had made decisions in rooms where she saw the papers afterward. She could let him feel that same isolation in front of the executor. No, she said, he wasn't fair to you. That doesn't make surprise evidence better. It would keep him from preparing another argument. He's entitled to prepare. Christina folded the letter. You know he'll use the time against you. He may. Martha emailed Derek a copy herself. His response came that evening. We should discuss a joint operating structure before the estate meeting. The following morning, he came to the bakery with a proposed plan. Under it, Martha would receive the mill residence and a minority interest in a company Derek would manage. Christina's bakery could contract with the company. Derek would handle cooperative payments, taxes, insurance, and any future sale. Martha read the first page and returned the folder. No, you haven't reviewed the numbers. I reviewed who controls them. You need someone to manage the risk. I need an accountant and an electrician. Neither needs to own my mill. You don't own it yet. Then there's nothing for me to give you. Derek lowered his voice. This arrangement could protect your inheritance. From what? From one bad decision. Martha looked at him for a long moment. If you want to help, bring your father's remaining records to the formal reading. If I receive the mill, you may ask what work is needed. You will not receive control for offering help. He picked up the folder. You're shutting me out. I'm telling you where the door is. It was the first time Martha had refused him while leaving a path back that didn't run through ownership. The refusal would permanently change how Derek dealt with her. She knew that before he walked away. The formal reading was scheduled for Friday in the same downtown office where rain had once pressed against the window. Kathleen would attend with the cooperative records. Ronald would bring his maintenance invoices. Martha would carry Raymond's original ledger. On Thursday night, she checked the canvas bag 3 times, then placed it beside the borrowed sofa, where she could reach it in the morning. Friday morning, Martha dressed before Christina's bakery ovens came on. She chose a navy blouse that buttoned easily with one hand and dark trousers with deep pockets. Her shoulder sling remained, though the doctor had allowed her to remove it for short periods. Christina came downstairs carrying 2 coffees. You slept? Enough. You checked the bag? 3 times. I checked it once. Martha looked at her. While you were in the bathroom, the canvas bag held the ledger, expense book, receipts, cooperative correspondence, and the original personal property note from Martha's cedar chest. Martha drank half the coffee, left the rest on the counter, and carried the bag herself with her right hand. The rain began as they parked downtown. Inside the executor's office, Derek sat at the conference table with his yellow legal pad and the folder containing his joint operating proposal. He had added tabs since Martha last saw it. Ronald arrived carrying a small file of invoices. Kathleen brought the cooperative archive copies and the preliminary confirmation letter. The executor waited until everyone was seated. "This meeting is the formal reading and distribution review of Raymond Jennings's will," he said. "We will address the mill first because its value and operating status required additional investigation." Derek placed both hands on the table. "Before we begin, I need my concerns entered into the record." The executor looked at him. "You may state them." Derek had prepared. He moved through his points without raising his voice. Martha had entered a damaged building after being warned it was unsafe. She had spent personal savings before receiving ownership. She had hired work, replaced equipment, strained an injured shoulder, attempted to move into a rough loft, and allowed a bakery with a family connection to purchase test grain. She also operated generating equipment without authorization, he said. Kathleen spoke. The first test occurred behind an open disconnect. It didn't reach the cooperative line. That wasn't known when they ran it. "No." Derek looked back at the executor. "My mother has always been capable in her own way. I'm not trying to take that from her." Martha kept her hands folded. Derek continued. "Since Dad died, she's become fixed on proving the mill has meaning. Every new cost becomes a reason to spend more. Every warning becomes evidence that someone is against her." The executor asked, "What action are you requesting?" "A delay in distributing the mill. A neutral manager should oversee the property while her ability to handle it is evaluated." "Evaluated by whom?" "An appropriate professional." "Have you obtained an evaluation?" "No. I didn't want to take that step unless necessary." Martha heard the mercy he wanted everyone to hear. Derek believed that by not acting earlier, he had been protecting her dignity. "What facts suggest she lacks legal capacity?" the executor asked. "I'm not making a legal diagnosis." "Then be precise about what you are saying." Derek glanced at Martha. "My mother is confused." The room became very quiet. He had said the same thing at the beginning of the meeting, before anyone at the table understood why the ledger mattered. Now, the word had a larger purpose. If Martha was confused, Derek's effort to control the mill could be called protection instead of ownership. "Confused about what?" the executor asked. "The risks, the expenses, and what she can realistically manage." Martha felt Christina shift beside her. She didn't look away from Derek. The executor asked, "Do you believe Mrs. Jennings understands that the mill carries delinquent taxes?" "She knows the number. Does she understand that repairs and compliance will cost money?" "She says she does." "Does she understand that the interconnection requires operating duties?" "I don't think she understands the scale." Kathleen opened her folder, but waited. Derek rested one hand on his proposal. "I've offered a structure that lets her live there, while experienced management handles the financial side." She rejected it without reviewing the projections. "I reviewed who held control," Martha said. "That's what I mean. You hear control and stop listening. I heard minority interest too. You would have housing, income, and protection. Would you have authority to sell? Under defined conditions. Without my agreement?" Derek didn't answer immediately. The proposal answered for him. The executor turned to Martha. "Mrs. Jennings, what are you asking the estate to do?" "Follow Raymond's will. Keep the mill, equipment, ledger, and cooperative account together. Transfer them to me if that is what he directed. And if the operating costs exceed the income, I reduce production, find other income, or sell after an honest appraisal. And the taxes? I use the cooperative agreement as part of a financing plan. Pay the delinquent amount before the deadline, and keep a reserve for current taxes." "You don't yet have a signed cooperative agreement." "No. Kathleen cannot offer it until ownership is settled and final inspection is complete. You understand the offer may carry obligations?" "Yes." "What obligations?" "Safe controls, maintenance, test access, continued operation, records, and standby payments if production stops." Kathleen nodded once. The executor looked at the sling. "What changes because of your shoulder?" "I don't lift, pull, or climb until the doctor clears me. After that, I still don't do work that needs 2 people. Ronald is paid for mechanical work. Christina's bakery pays for flour under written terms. Licensed people handle the roof and electricity." Derek leaned forward. "That sounds prepared because we've spent weeks forcing you to answer these questions." Martha met his eyes. "No. It sounds prepared because I answered them." The executor lifted Raymond's will. One provision applies specifically to Jennings Mill. Derek stopped moving. The executor read the provision in ordinary language rather than legal wording. Raymond left the mill property, fixed machinery, water equipment, original electric meter, and related operating records to Martha. The operating ledger had to accompany the property because it documented the continued use and maintenance of the site. If Martha declined the mill, the executor could sell it as one property. The machinery and operating records were not to be separated before sale. The will didn't promise that the mill was profitable. It didn't name the grandfathered account. It required the estate to keep the physical site and its record together. The executor set down the will. "Mrs. Jennings, did you bring Raymond's operating ledger?" Martha bent toward the canvas bag. Derek watched her remove the black book and place it on the table. "Yes," she said. The executor turned it so the spine faced him. "This is the original?" "Yes." Kathleen moved the archive copies beside it. She identified the meter number, account reference, annual standby payments, employee initials, and output readings. The entries matched the cooperative's surviving records across the full history of Raymond's ownership. Ronald opened his invoice file. He identified the maintenance dates he had witnessed. His invoices matched the bearing work, seals, shaft alignment, and test runs entered in the ledger. He didn't claim to know the contract. He confirmed that Raymond had actually performed the work the book recorded. Kathleen placed the successful test report on top. "This is the one grandfathered interconnection preserved at Jennings Mill," she said. It was kept continuous through the standby payments and required maintenance runs. The account was never closed. Derek looked at the report. "Can it be managed by somebody other than the owner, only with the owner's authorization? Can ownership of the account be shared separately from the property? No. The interconnection is site-specific. It follows Jennings Mill under its preserved terms. What happens if the owner can't operate it? The owner hires qualified help, just as any small generating site does. Competent operation does not mean one person performs every repair." Kathleen looked toward Martha. Mrs. Jennings organized the safety work, preserved the original meter, supplied matching records, and completed the supervised output test. Nothing in my inspection suggested she misunderstood the equipment or the account requirements. Derek's pen remained still above the legal pad. The executor asked Martha to open the ledger to the note she had marked. She found Raymond's line beneath the test figures. "Keep continuous. Rights follow working site." The executor compared it with the will provision. The ledger didn't create ownership. It authenticated the working history Raymond had required to travel with the mill. The cooperative archive confirmed that history. Ronald confirmed the work. The live test proved the machinery still met the account's basic output condition. One mechanism connected all of it. The grandfathered interconnection had value only at Jennings Mill, and Jennings Mill could use it only through a responsible owner who kept the system operating. The executor addressed Derek. "You've offered evidence that managing the mill is difficult. You haven't offered evidence that Mrs. Jennings is incapable of managing it. The records before me show the opposite." Derek's face reddened. "The revised appraisal changes the estate. It changes the mill's value," the executor said. "It does not change Raymond's specific direction." He read the revised figure. With the preserved interconnection, functioning turbine, original equipment, and usable loft, Jennings Mill was appraised at $410,000. The room held that number differently from the old estimate. Derek had called the mill a demolition liability. Martha had feared it might consume her remaining savings. Neither had understood the scale of what Raymond kept alive. The executor explained that Martha's acceptance of the mill would be accounted for within the estate distribution. It wouldn't erase the remaining terms or give Derek a claim to manage the property. The house and savings would be handled under those separate terms. Derek turned to Martha. "You knew the appraisal before today? I received it yesterday, and you didn't call me. You received it from the executor at the same time. You could have discussed my proposal in light of the number. The number didn't change the control section. This affects everyone. Yes. And you're taking it alone. I'm accepting what your father left me." The executor placed an acceptance form before Martha. It listed the mill, machinery, ledger, taxes, and operating obligations. Martha read every page. Derek watched her initial beside the delinquent tax disclosure. He watched her acknowledge the cooperative inspection requirement. He watched her accept responsibility for repairs. When she reached the signature line, she paused only to adjust the paper for her right hand. Then she signed Martha Jennings. The executor countersigned and placed the mill keys on the table. No one applauded. Kathleen closed her archive folder. Ronald returned his invoices to their envelope. Christina pressed her lips together and looked at the window until she trusted herself to speak. The executor slid the original ledger back to Martha. This goes with the property. She placed it inside the canvas bag. Derek closed his joint operating folder. What happens now? He asked. Martha picked up the keys. Now the taxes are mine. Derek looked at the keys in her hand. You say that like it settles something. It settles who receives the notice. That isn't what I meant. I know. The executor began gathering documents. The formal part of the meeting was over. Nobody had removed Derek from the estate or taken away his lawful share. He simply hadn't received the control he requested. In the hallway, he stopped Martha beside the coat hooks. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to decide for me. Because you weren't seeing the risk. I signed for every risk in that room. You could lose the property. Yes. You could damage what remains of your savings. Yes. And if your shoulder gets worse. I hire help or change the work. Derek glanced toward Christina, Ronald, and Kathleen as they came through the office door. You have everyone agreeing with you now? No. I have Ronald telling me when machinery is unsafe, Kathleen telling me what the cooperative won't allow, and Christina refusing to buy poor flour. That is an agreement. What do you want me to say? Martha could have supplied the words. She had done that for him most of his life, smoothing an apology until he could repeat it without discomfort. I want you to decide what you mean before you say anything. She put on her coat and left. Kathleen met Martha at the mill the following Monday for the final inspection. The new controls passed. The grounding passed. The original meter remained in place, clean enough now to read without wiping the glass. Ronald performed the startup while Kathleen observed. The turbine reached operating speed without the hard vibration it had shown during the first brief run. The generator held steady. Electricity crossed the meter into the cooperative line. This time, no one called it a test of possibility. Kathleen recorded the output as the first approved production under the reactivated arrangement. She shut her case and placed the agreement on Raymond's work table. Read it before you sign. Martha did. The purchase rate wasn't a fortune. It wouldn't repair the roof, pay the taxes, and support her life all at once. It provided dependable income when the turbine produced, and it preserved favorable terms unavailable to a new generating site. What happens during low water? Martha asked. Output falls. You plan for it, and if I stop producing, the standby conditions apply, the same kind Raymond paid? Yes. Martha signed. Kathleen countersigned for the cooperative and gave her a copy. From now on, notices come directly to you. The sentence was ordinary. That was why Martha valued it. At the bank, the signed cooperative agreement and revised appraisal changed the conversation. The loan officer still asked about insurance, tax debt, projected output, and repair costs. Martha answered from her expense book. She borrowed enough to pay the delinquent taxes, complete essential repairs, and leave a small operating reserve. The loan was secured by the mill. If the work failed, the risk remained hers. She paid the county balance 3 weeks before the deadline, the receipt printed on thin paper that curled at the edges. Martha placed it in the file box behind the cooperative agreement. Then she paid Ronald the difference between his friendship rate and his usual rate. He looked at the check. This is wrong? No. We agreed on inspection. You inspected, repaired, aligned, trained, and stood in an executor's office. I didn't charge for the office. You should have. I sat in a chair. You answered questions only you could answer. Ronald tried to hand back the check. Martha kept both hands at her sides. If I'm running a working mill, it pays working rates. You're stubborn. That isn't a discount code. He folded the check into his wallet. All right, but I set my own hours. You already do. And I'm not climbing into the intake. Neither am I. That sentence should be painted on the wall. Christina's arrangement changed too. She replaced the conditional proposal with a purchase contract for small weekly flour orders. The price covered grain, milling time, cleaning, maintenance, and a reserve for repairs. Christina objected to the reserve. It makes the flour more expensive than my current supplier. It also keeps the stone turning when a bearing fails. Customers won't pay any price because the flour crossed town instead of a state line. Then order less. I need enough for regular bread production. then charge what the bread costs. You sound very relaxed about my customers. I'm not asking them to support my mill, I'm selling you flour. They argued for an hour over delivery size and rejected batch terms. At the end, both signed. Christina carried the first paid order downstairs herself. Martha issued a receipt and entered the sale in the mill book. Being family no longer meant Christina's needs disappeared inside Martha's work. It also meant Martha couldn't expect the bakery to rescue poor production. The first week's flour ran too warm. Christina rejected 2 sacks. Ronald adjusted the stone spacing. Martha reduced the batch speed and milled them again. The second grind passed Christina's test. Martha didn't remind her how much the first attempt had cost. Christina didn't apologize for requiring usable flour. That was how the arrangement began to earn trust. Derek stayed away. He sent one email asking for copies of the tax receipt and cooperative agreement. Martha sent them through the Executor. He replied that the loan created unnecessary exposure. She didn't answer. A second email came 4 days later. I'm sorry this became so difficult. Martha read it at the loft table. The room now had safe electrical service, a repaired ceiling, and a second-hand refrigerator Christina found through a bakery supplier. Martha typed 3 responses and deleted all 3. Finally, she wrote, "Difficulty wasn't the problem. You asked other people to limit my decisions without first asking me for a plan. Trust will not return through email. The mill records will remain available through the Executor. Access to the property requires my permission." She sent it. Derek didn't reply. At the house, Martha collected the rest of her personal belongings during a scheduled afternoon. Christina came with the bakery van, but Martha entered alone first. Derek had removed the yellow stickers. Her mother's cedar chest stood untouched in the bedroom. Raymond's mug remained in the cupboard where Martha had placed it after the funeral. She packed the dishes that belonged to her, the sewing machine, framed photographs, clothing, and the bedroom lamp. Derek watched from the doorway as she folded towels into a box. "You're taking all of them?" "They were wedding gifts from my sister." "I didn't know. You never asked." He accepted that without arguing. In the garage, the wooden tool chest stood beneath the window. Martha returned Raymond's voltage tester and spare mill parts to it, then loaded the chest into the van. Derek carried one end without being invited. He waited until Martha took the lighter side. At the van, he wiped his hands on his trousers. "What happens to the house?" "The estate handles it." "You don't want to discuss keeping it?" "No. You lived here more than 30 years. "I did." His face tightened. For the first time, he seemed to understand that receiving the house wouldn't make it the center of the family. It would only make him responsible for deciding what happened to its rooms. "Do you want Dad's desk?" he asked. "No." "The dining table?" "No." "What do you want me to do with his things?" "Decide what matters to you." "That's all?" "That's enough." She took Raymond's mug from the kitchen cupboard before leaving. The cedar chest required 2 people to carry. Christina and Derek moved it together. They spoke only about the stairs and where to place their hands. At the mill, the chest fit beneath the loft window. Martha put her blankets inside, set Raymond's mug beside her own, and unpacked her clothes into a narrow wardrobe Ronald had repaired. She moved carefully. Her shoulder had improved, but lifting remained restricted. Christina put the dishes on the shelves. Ronald installed a second handrail on the loft stairs. No one called Martha brave for moving into a building with a loan, old machinery, and a river running beside it. They helped with the parts that needed help and left the rest for her to arrange. The first night, the turbine shut down unexpectedly. Martha woke when the low hum beneath the floor disappeared. She put on her robe, took a flashlight, and went downstairs without starting the machinery. A warning light showed low water pressure. Branches had collected against the outer intake after an evening storm. She called Ronald. He answered in a rough, sleepy voice. "Is anything hot?" "No." "Any water where it shouldn't be?" "No." "Then leave the gate shut until daylight." Martha did. Production stopped for the night, and the cooperative bought nothing. The loan payment would still come due. At sunrise, Ronald and Christina helped clear the intake. Martha stayed on the bank with the safety rope and recorded the shutdown. The turbine restarted before noon. That afternoon, Derek drove out to the mill. He stood just inside the loading door and looked at the repaired floorboard, labeled bins, expense clipboard, and locked file box. "I heard the turbine stopped. Branches blocked the intake. You fixed it? We cleared it. He pushed his hands into his coat pockets. I could come on Saturdays. For what? Whatever needs doing. Martha considered him. She didn't offer a key. The storage room needs clearing. Nothing leaves without being listed. I can do that. 8 in the morning. Work close. Derek nodded. And if I'm late, we begin without you. He looked toward the turning shaft overhead. All right? Martha wrote his name on the next empty line of the access sheet, but she left the arrival time blank. At 7:52 on Saturday morning, Derek signed his arrival time. He wore old jeans, work boots, and the brown canvas coat Raymond had once used at the mill. The sleeves were slightly short on him. Martha gave him a dust mask, gloves, and 3 inventory sheets. Start with the north shelves. Write down every motor part, belt, tool, and container. If you don't know what something is, photograph it. What about obvious trash? Put it in a separate pile. Even broken boxes? Derek looked at the storage room. Years of parts, sacks, cans, and scrap wood filled it from floor to ceiling. This could take a month. Yes. He began with the nearest shelf. Ronald arrived 20 minutes later and found Derek holding a rusted metal ring over the trash pile. That belongs to the old stone crane, Ronald said. It's cracked. It's the pattern for its replacement. Derek moved it to the inventory table. By noon, he had listed 37 items and thrown away nothing without permission. His handwriting grew less careful as the morning went on, but the descriptions remained clear. Martha brought sandwiches from Christina's bakery. She placed them on the work table and waited for Derek to finish the shelf before they ate. He looked toward the turbine room. What did Dad do during the annual tests? Ask Ronald. I'm asking you. Martha poured coffee. He checked the intake, turned the shaft, ran the generator, recorded output, and made the standby payment. Did you know? Not until I read the ledger. Why didn't he tell either of us? He may have thought there was some more time. Derek removed his gloves. He told me the mill was handled. He wasn't lying. He handled it. He should have explained. Yes. Derek waited for Martha to defend Raymond. She didn't. That was another change. She no longer had to make one family member innocent before holding another responsible. Derek returned the following Saturday. On the 3rd Saturday, he called at 7:30 to say his car battery was dead. I can come after lunch, he said. The storage work starts at 8. I know. I'm telling you why I'll be late. Martha considered whether he expected praise for calling. Sign the actual time when you arrive. He came at 11:20 and worked until the light faded. The storage room slowly became usable. Good parts went into labeled bins. Scrap metal was weighed and sold only after Martha approved the list. The proceeds went into the mill checking account, with a copy of the receipt in the file box. Derek never asked for a share. He did ask for a key. What if I arrive before you? He said. Wait. What if there's an emergency? Call me. What if you don't answer? Call Ronald or the fire department, depending on the emergency. So I'm still a visitor. You're helping on Saturdays. I'm your son. Yes. The word didn't open the door he wanted. Derek put the unlabeled key blank back on the work table. A spring storm tested him before Martha did. Heavy rain carried branches into the intake before dawn. The warning light came on in the loft, and the turbine shut down automatically. Martha called Ronald first. His hip was bad that morning. Then she called Derek. He answered on the second ring. What do you need? 2 people on the safety rope. Christina is coming. I'll be there. He arrived wearing rain gear and followed Martha's instructions without trying to change them. Christina worked the hook from the upper edge. Derek held the line around the cottonwood. Martha controlled the gate and watched the water level. A branch shifted suddenly. Derek leaned toward the slope. Stay on the rope, Martha called. I can reach it. Stay on the rope. He stayed. Christina freed the blockage. Water moved cleanly through the screen, and nobody entered the channel. Inside, Ronald talked Derek through the restart by telephone. Derek checked the bearing temperature, verified the gate position, and read the first output figure aloud. Martha entered it in the mill book. The turbine returned to its steady rhythm. Derek wiped rain from his face. Dad did this by himself? Sometimes? That was foolish. Yes. Martha handed him a dry towel. The next week, he gave her a copy of a letter he had sent the Executor. It withdrew his request to delay distribution based on Martha's capacity. It also stated that the cooperative review and expense records had answered his concerns about her understanding of the mill. Martha read it beside the flower chute. "You didn't have to show me this," she said. "I wanted you to know I corrected it. You corrected the record. I was wrong." "Yes." He looked toward the millstones. "I don't know how long you intend to keep punishing me." "I'm not punishing you. It feels like it. Trust returning slowly isn't punishment. What am I supposed to do?" "What you said you'd do." "For how long?" "I don't know." Derek folded his copy of the letter. That answer frustrated him more than a fixed deadline would have. A deadline could be endured. Trust required attention after the uncomfortable part ended. He came back the next Saturday anyway. By early summer, the bakery counter was under construction beside the working stones. Christina wanted it close enough for customers to see flour leave the sifter. Martha wanted a clear path to the loading door. Ronald wanted everyone kept away from the overhead belts. They marked 3 possible layouts on the floor with colored tape. "This one gives me no counter space," Christina said. "This one puts customers in the work lane," Martha replied. Ronald pointed to the third. "This one keeps fingers attached." They chose the third. Derek built the counter from pine removed during the loft repairs. He sanded away water stains, but left the old nail marks. Christina installed glass cases for bread and pastries. Martha added a hand-washing sink and a locked cabinet for mill records. The first morning the counter opened, Christina arrived before sunrise with trays of bread made from Jennings Mill flour. Martha switched on the grist mill lights. Ronald started the turbine. Derek set out the wooden open sign, then stood beside it, as if unsure whether he belonged inside or outside. Martha gave him a clean apron. "Coffee service," she said. "I don't know the prices. They're on the board." He tied the apron. Customers entered in 2s and 3s. They watched the stones turn behind their housings and listened, while Christina explained how the wheat was milled. Martha weighed flour sacks, recorded sales, and answered questions about the turbine without turning the explanation into a family history. Ronald sat near the work table with his cane against his chair. Whenever someone called him the man who saved the mill, he pointed toward Martha. I repaired what she decided to run. At midday, Kathleen stopped by in ordinary clothes. She bought a loaf and handed Martha the first complete cooperative statement in her name. The electricity purchases covered part of the loan payment and operating costs. Flour covered another part. Some months were better than others. Low water reduced output. A worn bearing used most of 1 month's reserve. The mill supported itself because Martha kept the useful parts connected. It didn't support fantasies. The loft became a home in the same practical manner. Martha chose a small table instead of a large one. She placed her mother's cedar chest beneath the window, Raymond's photograph on the shelf, and the ledger inside the locked cabinet downstairs during work hours. Her suitcase remained beside the wardrobe for weeks. One evening, Christina found Martha folding the last winter sweater into a drawer. "You're finally unpacking that?" "I needed somewhere for the blankets first. That chest has room." "It does now." Martha closed the empty suitcase and slid it beneath the bed. Derek's access changed after several months, but only slightly. Martha gave him a work key that opened the loading door on scheduled Saturdays. It didn't open the loft, turbine room, office, or record cabinet. He tested it once, saw what it didn't open, and said nothing. Later that day, he asked before borrowing a wrench from Ronald's bench. Ronald handed it over. "Bring it back clean." Derek did. At the end of summer, Martha invited him upstairs for supper. Christina came too, carrying vegetable soup and bread from the counter. Ronald brought peaches in a paper sack. Derek stood at the loft door until Martha stepped aside. He had entered before, without permission. This time, he waited to be asked. "Come in," she said. They ate at the small table. Derek didn't offer a plan for the mill. He asked about the next roof section and wrote down the supplier's name when Martha told him. After supper, he carried dishes to the sink. "I can come Tuesday when the materials arrive. You work Tuesday. I can take the morning. Don't lose paid work for a delivery. Come Saturday." "All right." Nothing dramatic passed between them. Martha didn't tell him everything was forgiven. Derek didn't ask for the loft key. He washed the bowls while Christina dried them. If stories about reclaiming dignity after family abandonment matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. After everyone left, Martha walked downstairs and locked the loading door. She checked the turbine gauge, listened to the main bearing, and entered the evening output in the mill book. The bakery cases were empty, except for 3 rolls Christina had left under a cloth. Clean flour sacks waited beside the stones for morning. Derek's washed coffee apron hung from a peg near the counter. Martha carried one roll upstairs and set it beside Raymond's mug. She turned the loft key from the inside, changed into her nightgown, and switched on the lamp beside the bed. Through the floor came the low, even motion of water doing useful work. The sound no longer belonged only to Raymond's Saturdays, or to records somebody else understood. It ran beneath her table, her dishes, and the suitcase stored out of sight. Outside, the river moved through the dark along County Road 175. Inside, flour dust settled on the quiet counter, while power crossed the original meter. Martha's lit loft stood above the turning millstones and steady turbine.